This is Power Athlete Radio. With your hosts, Denny K, Professor Booty, and the Luke Summers. And now, toes forward, hips locked, shoulders set, and retract those scapulars. It's time for some knowledge bombs.
Thanks for tuning into Power Athlete Radio. This week, we give Tait Fletcher a warm Power Athlete welcome at our headquarters in Southern California. Get to know our guest on almost every level imaginable through what can only be described as the quintessential bro-sesh. Our typical format of half bitch, a quarter laughing at our own jokes, and a quarter of relevant training information goes straight to hell as we dive balls deep into hot-button current events. Make no mistake, though, Tait Fletcher has expertise, knowledge, and heart where it counts. A former pro fighter and current boss of Caveman Coffee Co., Tait stays busy running a training facility and, of course, working on his own fitness. It's obvious that his dynamic skill set has enabled him to rub elbows with professional athletes, actors, and, of course, D-list jamokes like ourselves. This is a dense one, people, but very, very worth a listen. Tait Fletcher exudes positivity, and his humor is definitely infectious. Don't take my word for it. Be an adult and hear for yourself right now. This is episode 128.
What's happening, Power Athlete Nation? Welcome to another episode of Power Athlete Radio. This is Denny. I'm joined with John, Luke, and Tex. And our guest today is Mr. Tait Fletcher, professional ass kicker, stuntman, actor, fighter, motivational speaker. Shit, what else? Kindergarten teacher.
Actor / model, and not the other way around.
Model.
Model citizen.
I was going to say,
one of the Boy Scouts of America.
It was like when Fabio was like the best model / actor.
Not the other way around.
Not the other way around.
Was Fabio ever in film or just on the cover of romance novels?
No, he made it into Zoolander. That's it.
Rad, yeah,
for like 30 seconds.
He had his own workout video.
Oh, yeah.
The Fabio chest workout.
Well, he also had a weird like hemp pea protein that he was selling at Whole Foods. Like I was at Whole Foods with the kids, and I don't know, dude, this is kind of funny, but like one of my kids' favorite things to do is on a Sunday we go to Whole Foods and they get like a juice and they want to like go look at all the food and the meat.
Right.
And like they go, and it's pretty hilarious. We get like dinner and we go to like Whole Foods for like an hour, and I have no idea why they like it so much, but it's probably from all like the Vibrant. They're always like, Dad, what's that? And we were walking by and we saw like Fabio like hair blowing on the cover. I think I got a picture of it. With like on it with the shirt open, it was like Fabio's protein, and I was like, most of that I'm all, what the fuck is this shit?
That's awesome.
And hey, he's doing his thing.
Somebody loves that. Him, Tony Little, or whatever, the Gazelle.
Dude, I sat next to Tony Little on an airplane.
What? How tall is he?
He was wearing probably 4-inch stiletto cowboy boots. Right, jeans, and he had like they were so big at the bottom, like bell bottoming, that I couldn't really see his feet.
Right.
And then when he took a step, I saw them, the bell ring, and I realized he's wearing 4-inch. He was probably 5, maybe 4, 5, 6 maybe. I mean, with the shoes, maybe 5, 7.
There was a time that women would bang him.
Like, here was the nice one.
Like
he was wearing these crazy bell bottom jeans. He was wearing like a skin tight spandex blue shirt, sleeveless, and had his hair like pulled back, and then had like not like a cloth hat where it was like the ponytail came through the back. Like I saw him and I was like, it's fucking Tony Little. Like when you see him.
For sure, he wears Under Armour to the club.
Oh, sleeveless at the airport, sleeveless Under Armour.
Yeah, factory sleeveless, which is
which is even weirder.
That's like dress up.
Nice seat. Yeah, that's if you're going to a nice sit down meal.
Like if you happen to have like a shirt, you just cut the sleeves off, and it's kind of ratty. You're like, okay, yeah, it's a workout shirt. Yeah. But if you're rocking pre-bought sleeveless, it's fucking weird.
Step up.
You're wearing it for dress up purposes only.
With like a suit on.
It's great. That's
Did
like the
he talk like he drank 10 cups of coffee?
No, he was really weird. He only I think because he has kind of a squeaky voice, So, like, because as soon as he started talking to the lady, my head perked up, and then I think he got, like, a little, like, self-conscious, because I knew it was him.
You met some of those flavorless, just lackluster dudes like that, and you were a producer of a show, you're like, well, this is the guy, this is what you got to work with. I would totally be all right.
Yeah,
we're gonna do crystal meth every time. Like, I gotta get this dude suited every time before we turn the camera.
Now, for personality, would meth or cocaine or ecstasy
I
be the
think
drug of
cocaine
choice?
would leave them wanting more, and meth, it's got a longer half-life in the body for the endorphins to rush, and so I think that you'd get more meat out of it, because after a little while, they'd get like 2 or 3 minutes, they'd get nervous for more cocaine.
Yeah, see, that's why we do meth at the seminars. It's because it's a long day.
Yeah, well, or the caveman coffee nitro.
Yeah,
lights us
that's
up.
pretty good too.
I mean,
That'll do it.
what was the one guy who was the infomercial dude that actually died of the heart attack who was doing all the
Slap
blow?
chop guy?
Oh yeah. No, but it was one of his contemporaries.
Yeah, the guy with the beard.
Guy? Vince?
Yeah, it was the guy with the beard, and he big cocaine. And I'm like, I remember watching the infomercial and being like, that guy's
But
on
the
blow.
slap chop guy, that guy, he was for sure on that. I mean, by for sure, I mean he was arrested in Florida with meth and a tranny hooker. Like, for sure on that. Or she just liked meth.
I'll tell you what.
Billy Mays.
I do
Billy
have a
Mays,
slap
that's
chop though, so that infomercial works.
You
That
know,
guy is amazing. He can really present a marketed item. Like,
Yeah.
he's good at that.
Yeah, you give him like 6 minutes to sell something on a countdown, he will sell all of them.
Yep.
But
Billy Mays.
he'd be able to sell them. He's no longer with us, guys.
Well, no, that's Billy Mays. The other guy, the slap chop guy's a different.
Oh, I thought he was in jail.
Well, no,
He might
he was saying he was caught in Florida. I mean, Florida, I would think, is one of like
Pretty
the capitals
loose.
of meth.
If you get arrested for meth in Florida, you got a real problem.
Dude, I used to live in Tampa, and it was a shady place.
Yeah. It's weird because I always thought I grew up in Michigan, and we go
We're in Michigan.
on the shore Lake Huron, Alpena, Michigan, and then in Lansing I lived for a long time, and we'd go. My grandma stayed in Florida, and she'd go down there in the wintertime because
That's what all people from Michigan do.
Michigan.
Snowbirds.
Like, god damn, I used to think that Florida was like a nice, fancy place because I'm like, everything's kind of clean, and I'm like, wow, and Michigan's like Michigan, and then you get, as an adult, I went to Florida a couple places, I'm like, this is all racist hillbillies. It's like the lowest common denominator of human. They're all in kind of the middle of
Yeah,
Florida.
and I was going to say the middle, but when you get out to the coast.
You get to the coast,
Yeah, so
which
if
is
you get to
kind
the
of like
coast,
America.
It's true, but if you go to the coast, it's all the people. So, like, if you're on the east coast of Florida, you're usually from that, like, New Jersey, New York,
Interesting,
Philadelphia.
all right.
And then when you get on the west coast, all of a sudden you get, like, a whole different kind of Midwest kind of vibe where people kind of come down.
It's pretty,
But
man.
if you go to the center,
Yeah.
shit gets real
It's
nice.
and what's the crazy thing is, like, I drove through it recently. It's all swamp.
Yeah.
Like, the whole thing is swamp, and like people were tripping last year about sinkholes or whatever. I'm like, well, it's all a swamp. Like, I mean, for sure it's not going to go well. Like, that's not a base of construction that you're like, this will be solid for forever. Like, you gotta suspect there's going to be some problems.
My buddy had he was building his house, and he had a pretty sick pool, and they have to fence in the pools with lanais. And I thought it was for bugs. No, it's to stop alligators.
Yeah.
Because
They're going to
alligators.
come up and grab your dog.
Well, they'll come out. They'll come in, and you'll come in, and there'll be like a big ass alligator swimming in your pool.
Crazy.
So like he was like building it, had built his lanai, and there was a big ass alligator in his pool. He came home and was like, and you call somebody, and their job is to come get the alligator out of your pool, like a specific service. Somebody typing?
Yeah.
Oops.
The fuck is that?
Have you? Now this is a stretch. There's a documentary on Vimeo called Florida Man.
Okay.
Have you seen this?
I haven't.
You gotta see this site. I forget how I fell across this, but me and a couple buddies came back and watched this fucking. Where is it down?
Ooh.
Florida
For
Man.
sale, Florida Man's for
Get
sale.
it. $2,600.
Oh my god! But it was. It's
Was this the guy that with the bath salts?
It's like the guys go around at night and look at, and they basically go up and interview all these creatures that they find like just roaming Florida in the middle of the night, and they get up and they interview these guys, and they basically.
I kind of have
He's
a
almost
crush
got
on
the
this
caveman
But this
donkey.
guy
I
is
like
like,
this guy.
yeah, this guy's living the dream.
That's a
But
Budweiser,
it is
okay?
crazy. These people are like spinning right off the.
You
Right
know
off the
what kind of tripped me out a little bit about Florida was one, like the cost of living was so cheap.
Mhm.
Like I remember I had like my little condo in Safety Harbor was like $200,000, like a $225,000. I had an ocean view, and it was like in like a really nice area, like a nice
Yeah.
condo complex, all in. And I remember like like in California, you couldn't even get like a fucking shoebox for that.
Mm-hmm.
So I just remember like people, and then they're like, but then it was like really nice where I lived was homes, and then next door there was a trailer park, like literally right next door. And these people would have been like, I think it was like $15,000 for your little plot, and then you can put whatever you want on it. So people had these like homemade structures, like shanty houses. And so I would take, I got at the time, my pit bull bear, I would take him out, let him run around the backyard. And dude, there was almost like dog fighting rings. I mean, there was crazy shit going on over there, like on Saturday.
Yeah, they're
night,
like, hey John, are you in? Bring your boy over. We're about to fight later.
Dude, and it would be like always.
Like, no, I love it. He sleeps with me.
Yeah, he's like my best friend. I don't want to kill him. But like it was like Friday night, there'd be like we'd hear like bam, 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 clack, 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 and then fucking screaming, and I'm like, holy fuck, dude! I bought this nice house for like, I didn't know I was so cheap. Sure enough, it's gonna land.
Yeah, should have slept a couple nights there.
And I guess it's worth like bringing up that I'm sure there's great people in Florida, and we probably have some listeners in Florida.
You know, the head of the Scientology base is in Florida. Actually, that's where
Tait, are you
L. Ron Hubbard came in on a ship and saved everybody.
Well, his Thetan came in.
I'm not sure exactly. I know that he's an expert at everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have the annals of like what he's done.
History, yeah.
And he's written a tremendous history about himself. Really fantastic.
Well, did you ever read Battleship Earth or any of his books?
I never did. I would see Dianetics when I was a little kid. I remember being 8, 9 years old, being like, this answers to the world, and I had some questions as 8. And I was like, this doesn't look good at all. This is unsafe. This whole world, nobody's on your side. I'm scared to death. I guess we're just gonna go and bang it out and knuckle up. And then I see Dianetics. I was like, this can't be. And then I go, oh, everything is pretend on TV. Okay.
Dude, when when I first learned about Scientology, I was dating an actress, and I knew a little bit about it, and she talked to me a lot about it. I mean, that she wasn't in it, but it was kind of a joke within Hollywood,
right.
Like you don't want to get pulled into the cult.
Or you do.
Or maybe you do, because I guess when you get pulled in, that's when all of a sudden the money starts flowing.
When you're Will Smith, Tom Cruise, John Travolta. Only side effect, probably gay. But beyond that, if you're into that, that's a great thing. I mean, it's gay in the good way.
Do you think that they have to like part of like the initiation process is something gay, or you think like?
I feel like what I've heard about it, like seriously, what I've heard about it is that it's that we sit in a room and they're videotape, and we all. It's like what was the thing that George Bush was in when he was in Yale, and the whatever
Skull and Bones.
Right, that kind of thing where you go and divulge some horrific thing that you've done, and if you haven't done anything horrific enough, they go and you get after it with them over the weekend or whatever. And then, like, there's that kind of stuff where it's like, we all know horrible things about each other, so never leave.
So wait, you guys have had to have seen the HBO thing on TV.
I haven't seen it, man, but I've heard great things.
So
Going Clear, you're talking about.
Yeah, and they say that's what all of these accounts are. Is I forget the process.
But they jack people. They'll kidnap them. Like they'll take, oh, you're thinking of leaving? Okay, I'm gonna take your wife.
Yeah.
And they kidnap them and put them like there's castles in Hollywood that like the Celebrity Center is in like Los Feliz or somewhere, and it's this huge thing. Like you couldn't get into it. It'd be like trying to break into the Ritz-Carlton and find the room that your baby's in. You're like, they could be anywhere.
Have they ever approached you about pulling you into the fold?
And I've never heard of anybody. I've known guys that have been like stunt doubles to top end guys that are there and all that, and they don't bring it up. Yeah. Like it never gets brought up outside of it. I think you have to have a really intrinsic interest in yourself to go into it.
The girl that I used to date, she I think she got approached or like they got invited to this like deal, like they were kind of like
come get your toe wet, see if you like it.
Well, she ended up I think auditioning for some pretty big parts.
Yeah.
And then like she didn't get the parts. And then they like came back and they were like, hey, if you come hang with us, you'll get these parts. And I think she was talking to me about it. I'm like,
I'd be like, I am in.
I'm like, let's fucking go.
I'm a whore. I'll do whatever it takes.
I'm like, dude, like, at the end of the day, like, what could Tom Cruise and these guys have done that was so horrific? No, think about this. Like, I was trying to think, like, because we sat down and we were having drinks, and I was like, okay, what could they have done? All right, so what, like, they banged a dude or they got banged by a dude? All right, so, like, if that came out, would you really be surprised?
Right.
If they murdered somebody, would they really be the Hollywood celebrity?
But in Going Clear, they're talking about, like, hit squads that they run, like, stuff. I had a guy that was like a ex-Force Recon Marine, and then he went with privatized places for a while and all that. And he said, what turned me off from the idea of God completely was when I was out of Blackwater for a while, I worked for the Vatican. And I go, and I never asked him any questions about anything, but I was like, you kill people. That's your deal. Your deal is you're the best killer in the world, like highly trained by the best government of killers in the world. And you work for the Vatican. Like, they got guys like that work for them. Like, so I just figured, like, if you're any big corporation, like you're 100 million plus, you got people that kill for you on the staff.
Well, first of all, the Vatican, I think, if they were to rank in corporations, would be one of the richest in the world.
Largest in the world, largest landowners in the world.
One of the largest landowners. The one that struck me most about the Vatican.
They own their banks.
Well, I'm Catholic, right? So here was I was raised Catholic. So we go to the Vatican. I was going to say, that's ridiculous as a grown man, John, but go ahead. So I'm saying I was raised Catholic. So we go to the Vatican, and like, there are these people that are out there. I guess they're like nuns or different people that are out there like panhandling, basically asking for donations, and then they charge you to go in and see this stuff. And as they're walking through, they show this like wooden gold staircase that's like huge that these monks basically carved in a monastery for like 1,000 years. And the Vatican decided they want it. They just went and took it. And like, I'm walking through and I'm looking at all these priceless fucking artifacts, and I'm thinking to myself, like, the only thing I could think is it's easier for the camel to get through an eye of a needle than a rich man to go to heaven. And I'm like imagining, like, they're panhandling out money in here. There's like $1 billion worth of artifacts and money and all this.
You're looking at the actual stairway to heaven.
Well, yeah, and I'm looking at this shit and I'm thinking to myself, like, the collection plate comes around, all this, and I'm like, what kind of fucking hypocrisy are these people that, like, they have all of this wealth and they're asking more?
That's not what the question is. The question isn't the hypocrisy of those people. That's the greatest trick ever. How dumb are all these people?
I know.
That's the great question. Dude, that's the real question.
I saw a dude that had a deal. He goes, anytime you're feeling a little down, remember there's people somewhere that believe that penguins walked from Antarctica to get on an ark.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right? Like that was one of
those. All the animals of the world got on a 400-foot boat. Yeah. They didn't eat each other.
Yeah.
Everything was cool.
2 by 2.
So good, dude. All that stuff. I mean, I talk about, like, whatever, Scientology is no crazier, maybe less crazy than Christianity. That's just more accepted. I mean, it's all, to me, it's all the same shit. It's like Thor came about because we're like, it got thunder outside, and I was like, don't be scared. That's Thor up there. He's just cracking his hammer and then made some noise. Don't worry about it. And then your 7-year-old goes back to sleep and goes, oh, okay, it's just Thor. He's going to be cool to us as long as we sacrifice chicken in the morning or whatever the deal is. And that seems like archaic to us. But is it more archaic? Like, I remember the first time I'm like, so this whole thing, because I had to go to Catholic school for a couple years because our schools closed down because it was such a rich community that we lived in, that they're like, we're not going to pay the extra 12 cents for busing, so no more public school this year, which is awesome. But you look at it like that, and I go, so they're like, yeah, it's the Holy Sacrament. And Jesus, this is actually, this wafer turns into Jesus, is what happens.
The body of Christ.
I'm like, first of all, that's a whole lot of Jesus. If people are eating this all over the world right now, like, how big was Jesus?
Any bread could be blessed into Jesus' body.
Also, you are now a fucking cannibal. You disgusting animal. If you are a Christian that has taken the Eucharist, that's a little, you gotta say that's a little weird. Right. You can't laugh at pagans.
Well, if that's your deal. Here was one that tripped me out. I remember sitting in Sunday school, and they were talking about the Bible. And they were talking about, like, the different books and Mark and all these different Bibles versions. And a lot of, like, the letter to so-and-so and all these things. A lot of the people that were actually writing the different, Gospels and different books were written hundreds of years.
Written over thousands of years out of it. Out of 150 Gospels, they picked 4. Mary Magdalene, the closest one to Jesus, omit that one.
Well, they had...
throw in Christians to lions, and then the next year going, this is great for population control, let's adopt it as the Roman culture.
It was the Council of Nicaea, came together, and it was like, whatever, in like 200 or 300 AD, and they decided which books. But I remember going through and, like, them talking about, these books had been written, and I remember thinking to myself, does that mean if I were to write a book about George Washington, like, could I actually tell? I mean, it's basically all accounting and kind of folklore. So it kind of tripped me out a little bit that, like, here are these people that are writing these accounts. And you know what? Like, I firmly believe there was a great man named Jesus Christ that lived.
Of course, I think that's a historical fact, right?
Yeah, and
too many accounts from all over.
And like, why is it that, like, there was a great man who taught people, that this, all these things and helped people become better and talk about all these things? why did they have to like switch it over and make him this deity, this son of Christ?
Power.
Because it was a way to like opium. I mean, you know, as they said, man, religion is the opium of the people.
How do I get? It's just like, why do we have CNN and Fox News doing what it does? It's like because fear controls people.
Yeah,
it's the same argument that like Rogan and I got talking, and he's like, look at Colorado. They're taxing pot and they're making all this money on it. And I go, nobody wants fucking drugs legal. I said, that's the smartest thing ever. I wrote my high school paper on it. Yeah. Smartest thing ever. No way Eazy-E should have a Uzi. He shouldn't be able to afford one. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But a black market, like I know growing up, a black market is a great thing if you don't have much other job skills and you're willing to risk it. Like, and that's the only thing that funds that shit. And so if you really wanted no crime, you want people to rise up, you really wanted a solution to drug addiction problems, you would study it. Everything would be free and legal, and it would be like, whatever. Have heroin if you want, crystal, do whatever you want. We know it's bad to drink battery acid too. A lot of people don't do it. Conversely, just because it's legal doesn't mean people are going to guzzle antifreeze. And so, that's an educational thing. But the money, I mean, you know a bunch of guys that are in that business, whether it's the DEA, whether it's your local sheriff department, and the millions of dollars that every local sheriff department everywhere in the country gets to fight this evil of drugs. So it's easier if you're just smoking pot and I just tax you, that's one thing. But if I could tax all of us because we're all scared and we're like, we need to keep this machine going, get all the police, like that's trillions of dollars. You can't tax drugs enough to meet what they're already making on it being illegal.
So my dad, I've talked about my dad. My dad's a pretty interesting dude. He grew up here. He was born in Kansas, moved out here when he was a little kid. So my dad was born in 1937. He graduated high school at like 16, graduated college at like 19, and then he graduated from law school and actually was a probation officer and a DA back in like the early 60s. Crazy. And he's basically lived in LA. My parents have lived in the same place for 50 years. My dad's been a practicing attorney for over 50 years. And he tells me that LA was a pretty nice place, and he can remember down to the day that crack cocaine hit the street.
Oh yeah.
He goes, LA was a pretty nice place. You know, you had some stuff. Like he knew Mookie Williams.
And what was that, like 81, 82?
Yeah. It was in the early 80s kind of deal. And he remembered, he goes, LA was a pretty nice place in the 60s. You know, you had the kind of the hippie deal, some violence. They had like some like petty drug stuff. And then all of a sudden Richard Nixon comes in and declares the war on drugs. And then shortly after, crack cocaine hit the streets. And he goes, it was as if like somebody like turned LA. He goes, it was like the movies where all of a sudden like a black cloud came over and people just started like gun violence. He goes, literally, I remember it down to the day. And I asked him, I was like, what do you think? He goes, the only thing you can do is legalize this stuff. And he goes, we effectively have lost the war on drugs. And he goes, what you have to do is you have to legalize it. You have to let people make their own decisions in this world.
If you want the health of the community.
Yeah. He goes, if you want to destroy your community and you want to have all this bullshit, he goes, you continue to do it. But he goes, all it does is it keeps, and my dad has been practicing attorney. He still works 6-7 days a week. Yeah. And he's like, honestly, he goes, all it does is give us more opportunity to work as lawyers. And he goes, there's no way you will solve this problem. Right. He goes, it's a cultural problem where, people are fine to go to the drug. He goes, because the way that our culture works is based on a set of white Christian Anglo-Saxon
puritanical also,
right?
Like you're not supposed to have too much fun.
Well, no, but think about it. It is, right? So I don't fuck up or I don't break the law because I don't want to go to jail, which is this bad place where you take away my freedom. So then it's like, okay, so we don't break, we don't hopefully go do these things that'll get us put in this bad place. But then what if you run into people that jail is actually a better situation than they're presently in? So then they're like, well, fuck it. If I do something, I either make money. If I go to jail, who cares? Because it's a better situation I'm in. Yeah. And he goes, effectively, the system is fucking broken. And the only way you fix it is to basically like legalize this shit and put education and try to help people. Yeah. And he goes, he goes, because what are you going to do? He goes, it's like losing every football game 99 to 100 or 100 to 0. He goes, we lose the war every year. And you know what? Like Colorado and those guys, if people want to smoke weed, let them smoke weed.
But the thing is they're not losing the war. That's all predicated on the idea that you want a healthy community. But power structures don't stay in power in healthy communities. They stay if there's turmoil.
Well, they stay with fear.
If you like what is successful, well, for the people in power, what's successful is to have it illegal because we want broken communities. We want poor people.
But the illusion of success is to clear it out.
See, what's so weird for me.
And then I get to sit on a high horse and say, I'm for, but you're not.
It doesn't make sense to me that, like, you have people that, what they want in this world is this turmoil, these problems, and this desolation, and like all of this kind of fucking nightmare to like go on. It seems counterproductive to me towards a short life, but it's unfortunate.
It's also predicated on racism in a huge way, I think, which is more of a poverty thing, than anything. But like even in the 80s, what they did, it wasn't until the late 80s, probably maybe even early 90s, where they made crack cocaine. Like if you had an ounce of crack and you had an ounce of powder, you're going to do life. You're going to do 6 months.
Yeah.
And it's like, and that is a black and white issue, man. That's a ghetto issue and a suburb issue. And anybody saying that there's not institutionalized racism isn't looking at numbers, man. Because if you're 3 out of 5 black guys between 15 and 60, you've already been in prison. Yeah. Like that's crazy. And so either you're saying substantively, black people are different and more predetermined to their brains are such for crime or for whatever and don't really want happiness or oneness or unity, which is fucking racist.
Yeah.
Or it's set up in a way where I'm going to give you such horrible positions in life, there's not going to be much choice.
Well, the other one is if you look at the way this country is divided in terms of like just percentages of population.
Sure.
If you were to turn on TV and drive around, or if you were like involved in anything, what would you guess the percentage of like white, black, and Hispanics in this country are?
If you were just to watch television?
If you were to watch TV?
Yeah, it's mostly white, right?
No, I mean, most of the TV shows, are, like whether it be entertainment, sports, whatever, are usually black entertainers, black music, sports figures. Like if you look at this stuff, you would think a large section. It's like 13% of this country.
Yeah, but not really. I mean, if you've got over 50%, or I think it's something like that, of Hispanic people in America, something like that right now.
Yeah, this country is over 70% white.
It's in California, I think.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
This country, I think it's like, if we look it up,
at any rate, if you look at
it's like 13% is black, like 11 to 12% might be Hispanic, and I think the rest is like 70% white.
Really?
Or if you can look it up, you got to remember, like what's representative or in terms of media outlets like California and New York and all that is not representative of this country. I mean, the majority, like once you get away from the coast, I mean, you can kind of look at it, but look at it. What is it?
Still looking for a normalized percent.
Well, look at that. 2.9 million, almost 3 million to 4.8.
Number of births in 2013.
God, slow down, white people.
So white is 3 million, black is
3 times
600,000, Asian is 250,000.
So there's more Hispanics.
And Hispanic just throws that wide net. They're like everybody, Guatemalan, Mexican.
Right, just in California. That's
okay.
Yeah.
So percentage of the population, I mean, you can take a look, and I mean, it's pretty amazing. So like,
I would say
it always
amazes TV. It looks white. All the criminals are of color, because that's how it's presented. And because if you look at the top tier, like whatever actors there are, who is it? Who are the guys that are? You got Denzel, you got The Rock. Who else that has any color on them that you know their name? Like not very many guys.
But The Rock is like an Islander, which is like as my Samoan and Hawaiian friends used to say that like they're like the other white.
Like I got guys that are Mexican dudes that are actors, and they're like, I'm not getting a lead anywhere. Yeah. There's no chance. And it's like it's weird. It's a trip,
Yeah, but that's Hollywood. I mean, Hollywood perpetuates what Hollywood wants.
But also Hollywood is what Middle America wants. I remember seeing this hot black girl walk up at the Comedy Store one time, and she was smoking, man. And I was with Joe, and he goes, "Hey, what's going on?" And big hugs and hellos, and I was like, "Oh, who's that?" And he's like, "Whatever, I don't know what her name was." She was on news radio or talk radio or whatever that TV show was he did back in like '98, I think, somewhere in there. And he says, and I said, "God, she's fucking pretty." And he says, "Yeah, we had a whole makeout scene that we filmed. We had this thing," and he says it was badass. And I was like, "Rad." He says, "Yeah, but they never aired it." And I go, "Why not?" They go, "Because they showed it to a test group, and they go, America's not ready for interracial kissing on TV."
Do you know what the first interracial kiss on TV
that was? In the late '90s.
Do you know what the first interracial kiss on TV was?
Lucille Ball.
No.
And Desi Arnaz.
No. Oh, well, yeah. Okay. The first black-white kiss. Star Trek, Captain Kirk and
Uhura?
or
a green bitch.
No. It was the black chick.
I don't know, man. That's Callie.
Uhura.
Yeah, Uhura. They had a kiss.
Uhura.
And that was like this huge thing with like Star Trek.
How badass is he? he banged purple girls, pink, like
Dude,
everything.
how many broads do you
He
think
was just laying it down. I was like, I'm more like Captain Kirk than I am like these hillbillies. Like, this is all right. I don't care if she's got a tail, whatever. Yeah, that TV, that was great. And then Leather Tuscadero. That was a go-to show to jerk off when I was a kid. Happy Days, if you could get Pinky or Leather Tuscadero on there, I'd be like, ooh, there's an image. Now you guys got the goddamn internet. I don't even know what I would look at. I would be,
Hey, how old are you?
I'm 42.
Okay. All right. So I'm 39. So you're about the same age as my brother.
Yeah.
So like, you know, we existed in a time where like you came home and like the only thing you had on TV was like Chips or Bonanza. That was like our only channel.
Three's Company.
Three's Company.
You could get Three's Company, and there was one girl that wasn't hot, but there was one that was.
Yeah.
Well, there was the brunette was what, Chrissy.
But they had two different blonde ones.
Yeah. Well,
the dark-haired one I never thought was hot. But even as a little kid, like I've just been horny forever. 6, 7 years old, Gilligan's Island. I'm like, some days I'm feeling like Ginger, some days I'm feeling like Marianne. You know what I mean?
Oh God.
They could babysit me.
So that's what got you into the stuntman thing, the Fall Guy.
And then the Fall Guy, that girl with the tight jeans was who was that?
Heather Thomas.
Heather Locklear, Heather Thomas.
Heather Thomas.
All hotties that I just named.
Heather Thomas.
Old school all hotties.
Dude, that TV show made me want to get a Chevy pickup.
Is that right?
And that's why I have a Chevy Square Body, was because of that TV show.
That's dope. Yeah. And then they had who had the Power Wagon? Simon and Simon.
Oh yeah, that's right. They did have a Power Wagon.
Yep, they made that famous.
Yeah, the Chevy Square Body. Ever since then, I see him now. I'm like, oh my God, it's a Fall Guy Square Body. I'm gonna build that.
So how did Power Athlete come from? It came out of CrossFit football, or vice versa, or
no?
What?
So what happened when I retired? CrossFit hit me up about starting kind of a strength, kind of power version of CrossFit.
Now, how are you on their radar?
I was actually training at a little CrossFit gym over here. So I lived here in Newport Beach, and I was driving every day to Carson, which is at the Home Depot Center, StubHub, where Athletes Performance was. So, as you know, you just drove from LA.
Right.
Doing this drive up to Carson every day.
Yeah.
Fucking, it just fried me.
Yeah.
And so I got on the internet and I Googled and was put in Olympic weightlifting. And there was a place in South County that was like a gym, like Athletes First. And then there was a little CrossFit gym, literally right over here, like 2 blocks from here. So I drove up there and I went and checked out, and they had bumpers and stuff. And I was like, oh, this place is pretty cool. And it was a CrossFit gym. So I hit up one of my buddies who I knew was involved in CrossFit. I was like, hey, what's up with this CrossFit thing? And he talked to me a little bit about it. And as he was telling me about it, it sounded really stupid.
Right.
So I started making fun of him. And he
says, come try one. Let's do double Fran, asshole.
So what he says to me is, he goes, hey, you know what?
Big son of a bitch.
He goes, you should go to one of their seminars. And I was like, fuck it, I'll go to their seminar. So we were sitting there and he's like, you should sign up. So I was like, fuck it. I signed up and it's like $1,000.
Yeah, it's $1,000.
So I signed up and this was like, fuck, dude, this is a while. And like all of a sudden, and then I went back to play in Kansas City. And all of a sudden, like the season ends, I'm coming home and I'd signed up for one in February. And all of a sudden I see this reminder that I got this CrossFit seminar.
Right.
And I was like, fuck, I didn't want to go, but I'd already spent $1,000 and I was kind of cheap.
You're like, it's $1,000.
I'm like, it's $1,000. Fuck
Yep.
it. So I drive up and we go to the CrossFit seminar. So I'd never done a CrossFit workout, didn't know anything about it, show up at the level 1, did the level 1, came home and actually went and started training at that little CrossFit gym to go back and play. And then, so I just hit him up, was training there, was playing for football, getting ready to go back to play for the Patriots, or just getting ready to go back. And they, about 3 weeks out, hit me up. This was like in June. They just all of a sudden I got CrossFit hit up the guy, the place I was training, was like, hey, would he be interested in competing in the CrossFit Games? And I didn't know what the CrossFit Games was. So I was like, yeah, fuck it, I'll do it. Cool. So they sent out a camera crew and we filmed a movie for it. And then I went and competed in the games. And then 6 days after the games, I went to go play for the Patriots.
Right.
And then I got hurt in the last preseason game, came home, and then that's when they hit me up about doing CrossFit football.
Isn't that crazy?
So, and I remember thinking like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. I'll give that a shot. And so we launched a website like 3 weeks later, and then like got a bunch of hits and kind of started the deal. And then the first day we launched, we got 17,000 hits in like 120 countries. Right. And I got like 400 emails from people about like, how do you do this? All this information. And I started answering every single one.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy when people start emailing you, like, I don't know. I just think if you're a good human, there's probably guys that ignore it, but like when that started happening, like strangers would email, I go, I've got no, I can't go to dinner tonight. I've got a responsibility to these guys.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. You really feel like, shit, they're invested enough that they've sent me an email because I don't like to pick up my socks. Like they really did something here. And like I would take that, like always. Yeah.
So I respond to all these emails, and then after like 3 days of doing nothing, responding to emails, I was like, fuck, I gotta find something better.
I need help or a form letter.
So somebody was like, well, why don't you just start a blog? And I was like, that's what I need. And my favorite movie is Rambo First Blood. So you remember when the line when Troutman's like, company leader to Raven, talk to me, Johnny. So we named it Talk to Me, Johnny. Right. And I just started just going through and just answering every single question and just posting them up for people. And then really, I got an interesting question. Some guy asked, what would CrossFit football look like without the CrossFit? And I wrote this thing called the Power Athlete Template. And it was really like what my training had looked like and kind of how it all kind of had morphed. And then I got all these people that were like, can you design programming based off of that?
That is beautiful. Just in that idea itself. And that like, when you create community, which is like what a podcast is or what CrossFit is, or like, and so then Glassman creates CrossFit, and then he doesn't go, like, this needs to be the second. He's like, yeah, please, this guy too. Let's, and he makes everybody like little generals in this thing, in this idea. And then you do this podcast, and then that invokes this question about like, what would this, and then that becomes this, blossoms into this whole, and without that community, none of that happens because there's no question.
And then like we were doing it, and then Luke came on, and we launched the Power Athlete site, and it was just kind of an information resource. And then we just kind of slowly added stuff, and then it became programming and podcasts, and we just started adding more stuff as things became needed.
And I mean, I was one of the when he first launched, I was one of those 17,000 people. Like I was all over.
Okay, that's what I was gonna say. Is like, who were you before that?
So I grew up playing football, and then I found this CrossFit deal through a friend who basically was like, that experience that you had shouted out, like, come fucking try it then. I had moved to endurance sports, like I was doing triathlons because I thought that's where you're. That's, that was something to train for. But went through and just did what I would call kind of like the black box CrossFit for a couple of years, which is just, what someone just does and interprets from their level one. And it kind of I didn't realize it, but it set me back. And then I remember seeing the site launch, and the tagline was...
It set you back physically?
Yeah, it did, from what I wanted out of my training. And I did a little bit of aesthetics, and it wasn't until I jumped back on CrossFit football where the tagline was forging powerful athletes. And even on the comments, it was like, I'm a power athlete. And it was just like, it was always there in the DNA from the start of it. And when I started doing all this training on the CrossFit football site, I realized how I wasn't nearly as strong as I used to be when I was 16.
Interesting.
And I'm fucking, at that time, what was 2007? So
that's not good to think. My 16-year-old.
Yeah, I'm like 25 years old. Right now, like
so
I'm 25 years old, which is what we talked about earlier. Now I'm old enough to own up to my own mistakes, and I'm just like, shit, I need to be lifting heavy weights, and then I gravitated towards that site from what we've learned so much, or what I've learned. From either people on the podcast, through genetic testing, through a lot of these guys who are talking, Stu McGill, and how your spine develops as you're in a youth. Like, certain people gravitate towards certain sports because they are built that way. And
because you get success at it.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I kind of am coordinated this way, and I'm not coordinated at baseball at all. So this is, and then you get better at it because that instills success, and then that mimics the dopamine in your mind that when you get success, and it goes on.
And it was just like a compounding effect where the training put me in a better place to succeed universally, whether it was at what I used to be doing in the CrossFit gym, because I was a CrossFit coach / corporate guy. And
what / corporate guy?
Well, I would moonlight as a coach, 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. coach, and then 6 a.m. coach, and then I would go to my real job and sell truck parts.
Yep.
But it was just like when I would jump back in with our clients at our classes, I would be fucking dominating them in these workouts that weren't getting me to where I wanted to be.
I think it's so important in that whole conversation. Like, I hear a lot of guys, especially like coming from a fight background, and there's all these guys, try to burp you out of my triangle or whatever, some stupid shit that they think is cute. But it's like the bummer for me is because as an athlete in that way, it's like, I always knew if we're both equal skill and I'm stronger than you or I have more endurance than you, I'm going to whoop that ass. Yeah, even if you have a little better technical skill, but you don't have the endurance I have, I'm raping you. There's no chance you can succeed.
Can you give us a little background on like you as a fighter? You're like an MMA guy. You're a
I
jiu-jitsu
was
fighter,
like kind of I got into it, I guess, in like 99 maybe is the first time I had an opportunity to start training in a combat sport in a formal way. And I met a guy named Arlen Sanford, and Arlen is a founding member of a group called the Dog Brothers that exists here. They used to be in Hermosa Beach, and we would go fight in a park on the equinoxes, on the summer and fall solstice, and there'd be like 15 to 20 guys or something. They would come with their sticks. There's guys that would come from Iceland, from New York, from everywhere. And there was only like 15 or 20 of them, but there'd be like 300 people in lawn chairs that would circle up the park, right?
What park is this?
It was in Hermosa Beach. I'm not sure which one it
yeah,
was.
I grew up in Palos Verdes.
Okay.
So yeah, I know the area.
And so Arlen had it founded kind of as a thing. They were like international stick fighters. They came from like Krabi Kabrong is where Arlen came from, which is a dual stick. It's like the outset of it's a Muay Thai with weapons. So it's like when you talk about distance of combat, you know, we're talking about either weapons with trajectory like a bow or a spear or a rifle or whatever. And then if you're talking about hand-to-hand combat, the first thing would be a spear or sticks, some kind of weapons that I can swing, your feet, your hands, your elbows, your knees, and then we're grappling. And so there's all these different spatial relations with combat, right? And, you know, I mean, which is like, to put it in perspective, that if that's confusing all, is like why it's like what made George St. Pierre great. He wasn't awesome at anything. And he's kind of an awesome wrestler, actually, but he would marry those distances together beautifully between striking and grappling. It was like, if one guy's really great at this and he's also really great at this, it doesn't really matter if they can't marry them together. So I think in combat, it's like where you can flawlessly travel distance and own every aspect of the way. And the guy that does that, he owns the pace, and that's the guy that wins generally. So my outset was with stick fights, and Arlen and Eric Knaus, they did an international stick fighting competition, and they weren't satisfied because they were heavily padded. And so they said, you know, they become like karate point sparring where it's just like touching. And like, they're like, I don't know that when you came across the backhand that I'd have been able to come in like I did if I didn't have this helmet on. Said, so would you like to come? I live in Long Beach, and maybe we'll fight for the rest of the weekend. And I've got, I've been playing with the idea of fencing masks just to keep our eyes from getting cut. And then the rest of your head and face is all open, and we'll use batting gloves. And so they went and they fought each other 30 times or whatever the next couple of days. And then Arlen went back to Santa Fe. And also there's all this stuff like, you know, like old Kung Fu would say, like, well, I would be in the UFC, but I would kill people. My sport, like the Krav Maga guys or whatever, yeah. I would kill people. Oh, of course you would. Okay. Tell that to your little brother, and you can keep dominating him as long as you don't ever want to really try. And so like there's that aspect to it, and they're like, we want to know, like, are you really gonna die if you get smashed with a stick? No, it turns out you can break your finger or you get knocked out or something like that, but nobody dies. So that was one thing they found out. So then a small group started coming together, other guys that got interested. Arlen got me interested because I was just a big dude, and he's like, this is a guy I want. It's not easy to get training partners. It's not like, hey, you want to go throw the football? It's, you know, you got to be willing to get smashed with a stick. It's a thing, you know? And so that's where I started. And then I found like distance. I learned a lot about that and crashing. And if you crash into a guy because it gets too hot on your feet, like you're on the ground. And if you're on the ground and you don't know what to do, and somebody does know what to do, you might as well be in the ocean with your hands tied. Like you don't know how to swim that way. And so guys that knew a little bit of jiu-jitsu had a huge advantage. And so I started training jiu-jitsu, and then it just went from there. And then I fell in love with jiu-jitsu. I probably had, I don't know, 300 or 500 stick fights, like a lot of stick fights. And, but the first thing I attack is your hands. It's holding the weapon, and it's the thing closest to me. And so your knuckles would swell, and so maybe you couldn't grab. And I was training a lot of gi jiu-jitsu, and so it would really put a hindrance on my usage of my hands. And I was in tournaments all the time, and so I would compete regularly. And so I moved away from stick fighting. I went fully into jiu-jitsu. By the time I was a purple belt, I don't know, again, hundreds of competitions. Medaled in all, like I'd go to the Worlds, I'd go to the Pan Ams, and medaled in all those, and not the Worlds, the Pan Ams, maybe the Worlds too as a purple belt. I think I got a bronze. I medaled in the Open and in my weight one year, but like that was a huge thing about competition. I'd never been in organized competition. And then came the idea that you could do full contact fights. And like we were watching Pride, we were watching old school UFC at that time. And this is like probably maybe 2002 or 3 or something like that. And, you know, I trained a lot with like Amal Easton and Elliott up in Colorado is kind of my guys. And then Greg Jackson and Mr. Winklejohn. And, you know, it's really where my kickboxing came from. And so I just started, those became kind of my camps, and those became kind of my brothers in that way, and trained with guys up in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And we just kind of went from there. And then like, as soon as the fighting started and that became a thing, like King of the King, smaller regional shows started coming around. And so we started fighting in those. And there's like, you know, Joey Villaseñor, Keith Jardine, Diego Sanchez, myself, Carlos Condit, we all kind of started about the same time. And we all just took off with it and loved it. And it's like, that was the outset of MMA in New Mexico. And so then I moved and fought in a few competitions out here. I picked up work after one of my fights on a movie on The Longest Yard, and then that shot out here, and that brought me to California. And
dude, one of my closest friends was in that movie.
Yeah,
Bob Sapp.
Yeah. So Bob, I beat up a couple times. He's a
in
funny,
the movie or in real life?
No, like I grabbed. He was talking a bunch of shit, so I grabbed a single on him and I put him down. I'm like, I said, I saw your last fight in Pride, bro. I said, we were in Santa Fe, right? And I was like 3-0 at that time in MMA, and my jiu-jitsu was fucking, I'd kill you, but like he was, and then he's a big football player, whatever, and the nicest guy, the best, one of my favorite people on the world, like he's a guy that you could sit in a room with forever, and he just reeks of happiness, and like he's one of the most lovable guys I ever met. And he's like, oh, because he's big as anything. He's 400 pounds. I mean, with abs, like. You know, he's got a doctor's bag that he carries with him, which God knows what's in that.
No,
it looks heavy to carry.
You don't want to ask.
And he's huge, and one of the best facial actors I ever saw. Like from I think wrestling, and like he's awesome. And but I grabbed the single and I put him down. I was like, "You were breathless at sea level in Japan, dude. Up here, you'll have a heart attack before you get up here." He just starts laughing. But we got to train a bunch, and then Maurice Smith and Ivan Salaverry were training with them, and then Ivan's like, you got to go peep Eddie Bravo's joint. We go down there and roll sometimes. And so then I went into the bomb squad. Eddie had just opened 10th Planet. And then I fell in love with Eddie's style of jiu-jitsu. And I became one of his guys on that day. And then I kind of went from there. I fought in the WC a little from there. And then Hawaii a couple times, Ultimate Fighter. And that's kind of my background with sports. I've got a gym. I've got a 10th Planet school in Santa Fe that Ruben Rivera and Nate Harris run, and they're killing it. Ruben might go into Metamoris, which is one of the bigger no-gi jiu-jitsu tournaments right now. But and it's a trip too, like getting like, you know, like I learned from those guys. It's like I always thought like the best way is to give everything away. And you know, I learned about like there's a saying, a high tide rises all ships kind of thing. And I saw this fucking hippie with a bumper sticker that said when everybody does better, everybody does better. And which is a kind of a hippie thing to say, which I've really adopted and I love, and I fight tooth and nail for it, because the deal is for me, what I learned in the rooms of jiu-jitsu and in fight camps is that, you know, if I'm killing you with the same triangle every time, and I'm like, I'm never going to show you because my ego's so fucked up that I have to keep that secret, you never get better very, very quickly, right?
Mm-hmm. And never get you better.
But that's the trip, is like, I didn't know that doesn't get me better either. And I'm like, I need you to know everything. So here's my setup. I don't ever want to catch you here again. And if you do, I'm going to squeeze you out. But like this. And so that also speaks to me having to learn another way then. And so then I'm constantly in the learning, and I'm in this beautiful kind of euphoria of unlimited resources. Whereas the other place has like a glass ceiling on it, I think, in a way. And I see a lot of jiu-jitsu schools that run on that glass ceiling. And like when I got to 10th Planet and I started looking at that, and it's really became so clear that I need my students, I need everybody to know everything that I know. Otherwise, I'm not going to grow at the highest rate possible. And then that's what I want. So it's an entitled self-interest.
Sure.
Like it's an entitled altruism or self-interested altruism, maybe you could say. And so I started looking at that, and that started to bleed everywhere into my life. It's like, I want your business to do great. I want you and your relationship to do great. I want everybody. I want successes all around me, and I want us all to win. And so that's kind of like, people talk about different motivations for fighting and what all that looked like. And it certainly wasn't about money when we started. There's a great poster of me and Jardine, Diego Sanchez, and Carlos Condit on it in the four corners of this big poster, which we all maybe made $2,000 that night if we put our purses together. Like it's not money, you know. People are there trying to find an expression of themselves and their athleticism and what they work for. And I wonder who I am under these conditions. And so I've always sought to put myself in scary, awkward, trying positions. Do something hard every day. Do something you're uncomfortable with. Put your ego at risk. And that whole thing of jiu-jitsu really trained me that. It's like the more you put your ego at risk, the better everything gets. And the more happiness comes to you. You know, the unhappiest guys are trying to hang on to something. So it really became a part of my journey, like, you know, like I'd had a really colorful history up until then. But when I started doing that, I go, how do I optimize happiness? How do I optimize my community to be a better, more enriched place? How do I live in a place of empowerment instead of feeling like, the government's just fucked and you don't have any choices and people are mean and you're always going to be kept down? It's like, that was my story for a long time, and I just don't believe that that's true. So like anytime I get a opportunity to talk about it or to push that forward, like I really believe that is the truth. And it's just, you know, I think, you know, this country will need a revolution and in some way, and it's not going to be with bullets. You know, I think it needs a spiritual consciousness revolution in a way where people are like, no, I'm not willing to shop at Walmart. I don't care. I'll pay $1 more somewhere else because this actually robs my community and it erodes it like a cancer. And even the people that work there, you'd say it gives jobs. It doesn't. Those people are in horrific conditions. They don't give, you know, like, and I don't want to bag on Walmart, but like all corporate endeavors are kind of that way. And so what do I do if I'm making dollars and I'm putting them back in? Where am I putting them? And I want to do it consciously. And so I'll drive the extra mile to go see the farmer to buy my steaks from, or like, I'll go, like, I don't want to go to an Applebee's. I want to go to a little startup that somebody's trying to make happen. Like, and so, you know, and it's weird, like, to talk about that coming out of fighting, but it's like, you know, fighting taught me everything really in a way about being a man and about like accountability and about respect and about dignity. And it gave me a real sense of pride. It was maybe the first time, like when I was a competitor in jiu-jitsu, I remember the first time when I got a shirt and it was like maybe a Mundial shirt or something. It said competitor on the back. And I was like, I was so fucking proud, man. Like because I was a scumbag, you know, I'm a criminal. And like, I'm like, and I was like, this is something, man. And I've worked for this. And it's like, even I remember when I'd gotten sick and I didn't train very well and I won this tournament anyway. And I was like, I felt horrible about it because I'd had enough pride in me to go, you didn't earn it. You didn't suffer for this. And I think it's important to suffer in life, man. Because and it's weird to say, it's like it's one of these paradoxes. I think that's where the sweetness of life is in that struggle. It's in that suffering. And I think that's what you find in, like, you know, in gyms like this too, is like, you know, there's a girl we're deadlifting the other day and she pulls 135 and it's like quaking. It's all of it to get it up for her, you know. And there's like 10 and like everybody is stoked. And afterwards she's really self-deprecating. It's like, well, that's nothing, you know, you guys, you pull whatever. And I go, it's the struggle, man. You didn't quit in the fight. Like that's what, like, people are like, oh, what's CrossFit about? Or what's this about? What's that? Like, the thing is like, we put ourselves in situations where it's like failure is there. You know, everybody wants to talk all this failure is not an option, or I'm a self-made man, or fucking lies. You're telling yourself fucking lies. It's some weak shit. It's like failure is there. The great thing is when people push past that, man, when they push past their own ideas of quit, when they erase can't from their mind, like those are the things that like fire motherfuckers up. And that's where that revolution is. It's an internal job, first off, you know? And so I look at it like that. And I think, you know, that's the thing that CrossFit's special about. That's the thing, like when you were talking about earlier, Luke, about your goals. And like, well, my goals weren't fitting what this program in CrossFit is, but that's not the only CrossFit there is. Oh yeah. And like, so now, you know, as a coach, and I teach my coaches and you know, I see at Deuce Gym in Venice where I work out all the time, you know, everybody, one of the first questions, what are your goals? Where do you need to go? Whether it's like, oh, I need to look like this for a movie role, or no, I'm playing college baseball and I need to have, like, And it's like going and sussing that out. Like that's what a coach is. A coach isn't like, here's programming, let's run it, I'll move you through movement. Like coaches, what are your dreams? What are your goals? And how can I help you get there and remove the obstacles on the way? And that's the beautiful thing about CrossFit. Like that kind of, you know, so all those kinds of things where people are trying, man, that's where you find me. I just like that. That's what I like. The other stuff, because I'm prone to depression and killing myself. I'd rather do that too. You know what I mean? I need to be around fired up people that are showing me, here's the greatness of life, you know?
So did you have a coach going through all those phases of your MMA that was able to make that coach-athlete connection with you to make you realize, like, hey, that high tide rises all ships, iron sharpens iron?
How many times have you heard me say high tide?
I know, it's
rises all
funny seeing
boats?
the.
I know, dude. So
It's great,
my
man.
roommate in college had that, had like a little plaque on his wall. And, you know, when we walked in the house, and I've been saying that, and dude, I laughed as soon as you said it, because it fucking, like, that's our whole motto. I sat with a guy who was pretty, a while ago, I sat with this dude who's pretty successful, and we were talking about business philosophies, and he asked me, and I said, you know, I'm pretty simple, high tide rises all boats. I want everybody around me to strive for greatness, because it just picks me up. And he looks at me and goes, I'm more into battleship. I got to sink you to win.
Yeah.
And that moment was so telling about him, and more importantly, his business, even though the guy's outwardly very like, oh yeah, hey, you know, help this and that, but that was his model. And, you know, and I never wanted to be that person that, you know, succeeds at the expense of others. And I think, like, because we run it all the time, you know, it's like, I don't win unless you're a piece of shit, or if I step on your back to get there. And I think, like, that's such a fucking hollow
It's a
existence.
broken construct, man.
Well, it is
for me.
It's, yeah, I mean, it is for us too. Like,
I can see it works for guys. I like the guy you're talking about. It's like I can see that. That's a choice. But your life is empty and alone.
And he is empty and alone. And you know, what's interesting is, like, listening to you talk. For all the reasons that I played football was for the same reasons you did. Like the fact that I got to go out and I got to prove to myself exactly how good or bad I was and test my mettle against the best in the world gives you this kind of self-fulfilling, like, confidence to be able to go and do more and more things.
Yeah.
And then you can walk out in front of millions of people and do this and handle these people at a high stage. Just breeds something different. And whenever people ask me about, like, you know, like give me some history on like what you learned or how it all fits, I said the best things in life I learned were from my mom and dad and from playing football. It taught me about hard work and perseverance. Like, I listened to my dad get up every morning and go to work and bust his ass, and my mom this. I mean, everything. Everybody around me is a hard worker, and football is one of those sports where you have to be a hard worker to succeed. And just a second ago, I was clicking on Facebook, and I saw that my high school had to cancel their football season because they didn't have enough people to field the team.
Wow.
They started the season with 27 people, and a couple guys got hurt, and now they can't field the team. And I thought to myself, so we're at a point in our civilization where high school football, you can't even get enough people to go field a football team, that they've seen this max exodus of kids not playing football.
It's a crazy thing.
Well, yeah. Well, it's this idea, maybe concussions or whatever, or maybe academics are important or this, and I'm not going to get a scholarship, so why play?
Right.
And it's like, I couldn't tell you, I wouldn't be sitting here, and I wouldn't be half of the person I was if I didn't have those opportunities. And like that was just a sad realization as I'm sitting there listening to you talk about, like, you know, all of these, you know, and the other thing that really struck me is we also have a deal where we never say no to anything. So like when people are like, hey, come up, do this, we're always like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
Because you never know where things are going to lead.
Right.
And like, as I was sitting there listening to you talk about your journey, I'm sure that journey could have been stopped if you were like, yeah, I don't feel like going tonight. Or, hey, you know what? I don't want to get hit with a stick. But like, I guarantee you're the type of dude where it's like, fuck it, sounds like a good time. What's the worst that could happen? You know, and then that leads to one thing, and then it goes here and here and here and here. And I realized most people close themselves off from, and, you know, you can be hokey and call it the universe by just saying no to everything, or being like, no, I don't want to go out. Whereas our deal is like, I'm open to everything. People are like, hey, you want to go here? I'm like, yeah, let's go do it. You know why? Because we never know where it's going to pay out.
I've trained my mouth smarter to be smarter than my head in a way. Because like, no, I'd rather eat chips and sit on the couch is what I'm thinking.
Well,
but my answer is yes, I'll go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what you're saying.
It's like that movie Yes Man with Jim Carrey. I fucking love that movie. You know why? Because he's like, he promises himself he's going to say yes to everything, and like yes is his path to like this kick-ass happiness. And like he's on TV at the Nebraska game, and his family's like, "How the fuck does he get there?" But like I realized so many things in my life, every amazing story that I've had, and like I like Luke will on occasion be like, all right, so tell me a really wacky story. And, you know, like then I'll tell him something. He's like, how'd you get to that? I'm like, I just said yes. Hey, do you want to go here? Sure, let's give it a shot. Let's see what happens.
Right.
And it's played into this Guy's such a douche.
Yeah, every day.
But he only revs by our fucking office because we used to have a girl that worked here that only sets our
and he's literally rev by like 3-point, glancing over the shoulder, in like second gear.
He could just come in and say hello.
Actually, I want to go back there and just fucking weld his muffler shut. Yeah, but and like that's what I realized. So many people close themselves off from shit just because it's too hard, it's not worth the effort. I mean, Fisher shot us an email. And like we pondered it, and then we're like, here's somebody who could have been like, fuck it, I'm not going to send that email, I'm not going to do it, and it just kind of like plays out. But I mean, just everybody that I've met that is has an interesting existence, because I mean, your existence is like super like kind of unique and interesting. Like you went here and now you're here, and it's grown into a million different things. Like every cool opportunity you've had is because of something else that you met. So you went here, you met this person, it leads to this, and you never know where shit's going to go.
They just did a thing. We just shot. I don't know when it'll air, if it will or whatever, but the UFC hit me up and they said, we're doing a Where Are They Now kind of thing, right? So we filmed that, and which is, they don't know how to film anything. Like, they don't know how to film. They can take the best story and make that boring. They're like, here's the thing, we got this template from 2001 we're going to use, and it can make Honey Boo Boo interesting. And it's like, I understand you got to do that to make dummies interesting, but if you got invigorating people, there's content that is rich, that's out, that's like this, like
just fucking turn on the camera and let me fucking go.
It's true. And no, I'm not going to say it again. I said it the way I said it. That's reality. Okay. But the when that thing when they started talking about all those things, and they're like, one of the questions invariably gets up, well, do you wish this would have happened or that, or how do you think that, and I just can't, man. I can't play God in my life like that. To the extent that I'm the God of my life is the saying yes and the trying to get positive thoughts and have the ones that I focus on instead of the negative ones. It's not that the successful person has less negative thoughts. It's that they choose to direct their mind in a way, and they train their mind to think in a positive way and deny the negative stuff. You have to, man. It's a tricky trick, but it's important. But like that thing, I always look at, I go, my biggest failures maybe turned into my greatest successes. I just didn't have the breadth and the scope to look at it. That's what I was thinking when you were mentioning your dad. And it's like a guy that's been in that, like if you have years alive, it means fuck all to me. Like I used to think like, oh, you look up to that guy because he's old. And I'm like, some people just get old. They suck forever,
and
right?
They have no rich fucking
But
experiences.
if you're aware and you're out there doing interesting things for people, if you heighten your awareness, like a guy like your dad that's been alive a long time and then aware and hyper aware because he's a professional, like that's a guy to listen to, because he's got a breadth of scope that I can't have for another 20 years, maybe. You know what I mean?
Every one of my buddies was hilarious. They always are like sit down and rap with my dad, and they're like, man, I love talking to your dad because his my dad's super smart dude, like graduated high school at 16. I mean, I remember in college, we would, obviously have practice and fucking tired to go to bed. So my dad would call, and he's only slept like 4 hours a night his whole life.
Right.
And so he would call me at like 4:30 in the morning, every morning, to wake me up, and I would get up and I would study before school because it was the only time I would study. And I remember he called me up, I'm like, I'm up. And he's like, what are you working on? I'm like, I'm working on this thing on McCarthyism, fear in America, for a political science paper. And he's like, oh, there was a book I read, and I was like, right around page 49, there was this interesting passage. He posted me the passage, and I was like, Dad, that's pretty good. I'm like, what was the book? And he gives me the name of the book, and I was like, when did you read that? He's like, 1973. I was sitting in my apartment on La Cienega. I mean, like, gives me this thing. Like, my dad's that type of knowledge. My nephew, my brother's son, is the same. Like, he's like the same genius level my dad is. And but my dad is my brother, and he calls my dad Westlaw, because Westlaw is like the database that they go through and checks all the law stuff. So back in the day, you used to have to buy all your law books, and then you'd have to memorize them or know the passages, and every year they would have to update them. Now they just have Westlaw.
Right.
So my dad still remembers and knows all his law books. And like my brother will call him up and be like, hey, Dad, it's like, it would have been volume 47, like shit like that. But
that's amazing. We're not born equal.
That type, no.
You'll get told that, kids. You'll get told that, but that shit is not true.
My nephew could read it too.
Yeah.
So like he sat down and knew his letters and his thing, and like we would sit and read him stories, and he would like go along, and I'd fuck with him and skip a page, and he'd be like, no, and we'd go back and have to read. Like he could read at 2 years old. Yeah. He's disgustingly smart, but the thing which is just so interesting for people that have had good journeys is they make like great storytellers, and like because they have rich experiences. Whereas you meet people and you were talking to them like in a few seconds, you're like, you've never done fucking anything in your life.
You know what it was for me? It was shame in a way. It's like for sure a lot of the interesting, exciting stuff in my life has been about survival and being like a rat in a cage and like you're like looking for a light opening somewhere. But like. Also, somebody was I remember saying I was bored one time, and this dude's like, "Only boring fucking people are bored.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you fucking go and live a life? God damn it! Like, you're boring. You're not bored. You're boring." And I was like, oh, "Okay." He's like, "You want to not be? How about you do interesting things? How about you say yes to stuff? How about you go out and you have some experiences instead of sitting here like a selfish little fuck thinking you're bored." I was like, "Oh,
dude, what we should do, what we need to do is we could start a TV show where we go and basically have those fucking interventions where you knock on the door and you're like, what's up? Let's talk. Like, Luke was great when
pack your underwear. You're gonna live with me for a week.
I put basically a beacon of fucking hope out on my blog. Like, I need fucking help. Like, my wife was pregnant with twins. I had a gym. I had crossed the football. I had all this stuff, and the people around me were proving themselves not capable to do this, and I knew these kids were coming, so I'm like, I need fucking help. So I get like 100 fucking responses from all of these different people that were like, hey, I want to come run your gym. The only person I remembered was this guy from Naperville, Illinois, who after the seminar sent me a picture in his Superman or Batman underwear holding a gallon of milk into the bathroom. Like, so this guy sends me this picture, and sure enough, but
it had context to the seminar.
So in the
I'm not just. I'm weird.
In the seminar, we talk about dairy and milk, and milk being a extremely anabolic substance. And I go through this whole history of really breaking down how milk kind of plays into it, filtered blood, and I go through this whole deal. And like at the end of the deal, if like you want to get bigger and strong, you want to put on muscle, lift some fucking heavy weights, drink some milk.
Don't be weird.
And don't be weird. That's the big one.
And there was a story about a weird guy that happened to be. No, you don't have to tell the story.
Hold on. Because he's actually Rob Wolf fucking sent me this guy as a client, but this guy was total fucking weirdo, and he would send me these like sultry pictures with like his hair like, out of the shower, right, towel on, pulling the towel down like right above his junk to show me his man beat, and he would send me these pictures like I'm leaning out, and I'd get these fucking things, I'd be like. So I tell the story in the nutrition seminar I still give this guy's an example of like, if you find yourself going to the weird place, take a step back. Don't be fucking weird. Don't send me these pictures.
Just pause. Don't send return.
Right. So Luke sends me this picture of like him holding a gallon of milk in these like fucking underoos in his bathroom like this. I'll pull it up. I'll show you later. I still have it, like on my desktop. And he's like showing it to me, and I fucking laugh. I'm like basically like So I remember his name, and sure enough, all these emails come through, and I'm going through, and I'm like, Luke Summers, underwear, milk, Naperville, and he's the only guy we interviewed, and he came out. But the thing which struck me is I was like, fuck. He's like, fuck it, I got this corporate gig. I don't want to fucking have it. I'm gonna move out here. We're gonna do all this stuff. And I asked him, I was like, have you ever traveled or anything? And he's like, no, really. I think he went to Mexico or
with my parents.
Yeah, with his parents, but had never traveled. I'm like, well, good. You're gonna fucking travel the world. You're gonna travel the farthest regions of the universe on this planet, teaching the fucking the gospel of CrossFit football, and he's been every continent on the fucking planet,
man.
And I was the type of guy who and I wouldn't even call this a failure. I mean, it's to each their own, but I would advise against it to anyone who's this guy. But like, imagine getting married, having a kid, watching my kid play at the same high school I did, then them raise their kids in the same little fucking bubble, and that's how I was living my life up until that point. And I don't blame my parents. I certainly had opportunities to travel abroad, like Fisher did like a foreign exchange deal or travel abroad. But I always imagined that. And then like moving out of my insular nest of like friends and family and work and gym and everything. I mean, every piece of my network was all within this 10-mile radius to come out here and run a gym. And my dad kind of looked at me. He's like, people would cut an arm off to be in the position you're in right now with your life. And he's like,
your dad said that.
But he's like, well, it was my current life. He's like, but if you think this is what you need, He's like, go for it. And it's like definitely the traits of my parents. They're kind of the same thing. Like old town, stay home,
You're like,
family.
there's gyms right here.
Well, the best is Luke's dad was like, this is my favorite. He's like, you don't want to lift your truck because a lifted truck doesn't drive real well. It's unstable.
And noisy.
It's real noisy. So I used to have this old 74 Bronco that was like so perfect, dude. It had like a 4-weight stroker with like 600 horsepower, 5-speed, 35. This thing was like you could put it in 4-wheel drive and blow up all 4.
Wow.
The thing was Lamborghini orange. If you actually Google orange Bronco on Google,
yours comes up.
It's the first one.
Yeah.
It's like it still gets posted on Instagram all the time. And one of our good friends bought it for his 40th birthday. He called me up and said, I want your truck. So like Luke's like, oh, my car broke down. I'm like, well, you want to drive the Bronco? He's like, yes. Do I? So
yes,
it's Satan's roller skate, right? And he's like, all of a sudden, he's like, would you send a video to your dad? Or your dad came out
I sent a video of like the garage rolling up. My girlfriend was filming it, and I like backed out and just like let it rip. And like all like the windows are shaking in my whole like apartment complex. And he's like, calls me. He's like, what is that? I'm like, oh, it's my loaner. It's one of John's
California living dad.
And he's like, that's nice. I'm like, but it's lifted. He's like, that's nice.
So yeah, but I had that truck for years. I mean, it was perfect. And one of our good friends who we do a bunch of consulting work for, it's like calls me up. He's like, it was his 43rd birthday. He's like, 43rd birthday. The only thing I want is your Bronco. Mm-hmm. And I was like, he's like, how about X dollars? I'm like, send a truck for it. It's yours. And he literally wired me the money that day. And then my daughters were so sad when it left.
Well, I was over too, and I was fucking sad. I'm like,
everybody was sad. Like, I mean, dude, there was so much trick stuff. Like, did you ever meet a buddy of Joe Rogan's, Rick Maverick, who owns Starling Gear?
No, I never met him.
But you know who it is. Yeah, so Rick's one of my oldest friends.
Okay.
And so like he designed like I have like my own ring from him, but like the shifter was one of Rick's original skulls.
Right.
So it's like fucking priceless because he doesn't make them anymore. So it had that. I mean, the thing was so fucking unbelievable. Like, as I'm going away, like my daughter was so sad, and she's like, so I basically built him a K5 Blazer. So that's the one we've been working on for them. So, right. But yeah, my daughter's like, and it's so funny because it's got a M16 mounts because it's a military truck, but it's got baby seats. So my buddy took pictures with like guns in it with the baby seats, and they're like, are those baby seats in there? I'm like, yeah, my daughter's like guns. So. But it's no, I mean it's cool. Like, and I always respected Luke for that, and that how many people really ever like fucking I'm gonna make a wholesale change,
sure,
and it scares the death out of people. I mean, I just kind of fell into it because I went to college, I got drafted, I literally got to drive across country to Philadelphia. Fucking show up. I literally was driving on the Schuylkill Expressway. I saw a number. I called it. I rented an apartment in 20 minutes. I fucking slept on the floor the first night. Went to IKEA, bought all the furniture, played there. Bought a house. Did all this, and then got traded. Went to Kansas City. Lived in Florida. I mean, I was used to like uprooting and moving.
Yeah.
And and I always thought it was bitching to be able to go someplace new, meet new people, like find a whole new network, do this, and and you never know where it's gonna lead you. And people are so scared of getting out of their comfort zone that I think it just leads to fucking being boring.
It's also overthinking, I think.
It definitely is overthinking.
Because you get into it, like you talk to those people, and like I go, well, what's the why not? What's the can't about what's going on? Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, if I did this, then no, that's too far out. You can't say then this would happen. Mm-hmm. You don't know. Yeah. Like the greatest thing ever might be there, and any new influence you have is good. I've never seen an influence that's been bad. That's been like. You know what I mean? It's like that doesn't really happen where it's like, I'm going to go to this new experience. And then like, there's always something rad that happens when you push the comfort Scientology. Zone. Maybe, who knows?
It might be fucking amazing. Who knows?
If you're out there listening to Scientology, I'll come into the fold, man. I'll do whatever. Let's go.
Yeah, like Tate, Will Smith.
You'd be like, we're not going to tell him
any
kind of shit.
Well, they like show up, and here's the best part. You're like, I'll tell you everything. And you know what? If you tell everybody, I don't fucking care.
Yeah, it's already on the internet.
Yeah, you're like, oh,
just listen to my podcast. It'll be fine. Whatever.
I mean, and I think what happens is a lot of people really get kind of fearful and stuff, like, fearful of change.
Sure.
And it's like, I think change is really good. And like you said, I mean, I remember I met like some pretty interesting, like I used to travel a lot. I mean, we still travel a lot, but I would always like, there's two types of people when you travel. Like you sit down, you see the person, you put on fucking headphones, and you're like, don't talk to me. And then there's other times you're like, so what do you do? And I've sat next to some of the most interesting people. I sat next to a dude who gave me one of the best pieces of advice I've ever heard in this world. He said, if everybody learned one thing, this world would be such a better place. And I'm like, tell me this one thing. He said, make more or want less.
Yeah.
He said, if everybody just either make more or want less, everybody would be fucking way happier.
Yeah.
Because if you don't want to work hard, don't want as much, live within your means. If you want a lot, fucking bust your ass, make more.
Yeah.
And it was like such a simple thing. And I was like, that's fucking insightful.
Dude, I heard recently that if you're not happy with what you have, how do you think you're going to be happy with what you think you need? Like the thing, the thing you don't have yet. Like,
well, that's the Fight Club.
And that's the deal, right?
More shit fucking, it just makes you more fucking anxiety of just having more shit.
I always said whenever dudes, like whatever that age was where it's like people thought I knew something, and dudes would come up and be like, well, what about this? Or what do you think about that? Or whatever. And I go, like the biggest thing I think is that taking yourself out of the kind of melee of life and looking at it objectively, like to where like these little things that are happening in your life aren't really that big a deal. Like, because like we make these mountains out of nothing, and it's like whatever you're all torn up about today, in 6 months, I guarantee you won't even be able to tell me what it was that bothered you 6 months ago. It's like they don't exist, and so we're in this temporal kind of thing where we crave permanence that is an illusion, like it doesn't exist. It's like, and like that's a huge perspective to look at. So it's like you can try anything, like literally anything is possible. Like don't step on other people's toes and be a dick. And then go ahead and do whatever you want. As long as it's not hurting anybody else, it's all fair game. Like right on.
And what's crazy too is like the shittiest situations over a certain time period become the most hilarious stories.
Yeah.
Well, kind of like what happened to you on Friday night. I've gotten at least 4 or 5 days out of laughter.
Really? Good Friday.
Long story short, and I don't know, maybe we edited it out. Maybe
so these idiots go out, and I'm pretty sure that somebody slipped a GHB or Rufino.
All through me and two buddies had like it was the Hangover, the movie to a T, waking up and having no clue. And I cracked my head open.
How creepy are people that they'll drug people?
One of our buddies ended up in the hospital with a wristband that said
fall risk.
Fall risk.
He was drenched.
Literally woke up and was like, "Where the fuck am I?" And they're like, "Well, you've been, like, what drugs are you on?" He's like, "Dude, we went out and had a couple beers."
Yeah, and these guys are like, we didn't go to the bars and stuff, but I would consider ourselves like we like to drink. We're experienced drinkers.
You know how to drink.
Like this isn't their first rodeo.
Yeah, like this was.
I'm so glad you're okay.
Yeah.
Well, dude, so my our fabricator. So like 4 doors down, we have a little hobby shop where we work on trucks and fuck around. And so my fabricator buddy who kind of runs it, he happened to be at the bar with his girlfriend who
saw that, witnessed.
Well, saw this going on, and they pulled him in. And he was like, honestly, he goes, they were drunk like little kid drunk, and he had to like carry Luke.
Yeah,
like,
he saw us power down. He like saw everybody power down.
He was like, and his girl who's like in 21 was like, how old are these guys? They're fucking like retarded drunk. And he's like, I don't know what happened. And so he carried them, and like it was good. Will was there, man.
100%. Like Guardian Angel, I definitely owe the guy big time.
Yeah. But yeah, these guys, and then he woke up at his house, and then his other buddy woke up with like some weird Irish couple or something.
Yeah, a different place, and then the other buddy in the hospital.
I used to work in a nightclub, and people would be, "Oh, do you want to drink a Coke or what?" Like
never.
And I would never drink anything. I would get a bottle of water with a cap on it, put it in my pocket. I never set it down anywhere. I was like, there are so many creepy people out there.
No way. I was at a club in Vegas that always get.
I can't imagine being somebody that somebody wanted to fuck. Dude, like if you were a hot girl, like thank God I look like me.
We were at a club, whatever the club downstairs in the Hard Rock is.
Right.
And we were at this big table with all these celebrities. Kevin Federline was one of them.
Yep.
And so we're out and all these people, and this fucking broad comes over with a big tray of shots. And I actually had been in the club like a year before, and somebody came over with the same tray of shots, and this girl sitting on my lap. I drank a shot. She poured hers in my mouth. All of a sudden, I'm sitting there. I'm like, man, I don't feel so good. And I remember like hearing my eyes roll in the back of my head. I run out and I throw up outside the club, like all up in the like parking lot, and like I literally fell down. And I remember my buddy chased me out, and he helped me, and I collapsed in the elevator. Yeah, and he dragged me into the room, and he fucking somehow got me into the room. They called 911, or he calls the medical staff, and they came up and they shined a light in my eyes and all that. And they were like, "What happened?" They were like, "Honestly, we just got to the club. We bought a round of shots. He did like 2 shots, and this happened." They're like, "He got drugged." And I woke up at like 8 a.m. Was like, "What's up? I feel great." And he was like fucking freaking out on me, and I was like, "Dude, I thought." So, long story short, I got dosed, and so ever since then I was like I'm uber paranoid about it. Like at a club, I like crack a Red Bull. Like I always grab a fresh one.
Hold on to it the whole time. You drink
Hold on.
Oh shit!
So,
I set it down accidentally. No, I don't want the rest.
No, I lose it. I never accept drinks, never do shots. So they come around with this tray of shots, same deal. I'm like, I'm good. Toasting my Red Bull, and somebody put PCP in the shots, and like my buddy, one of the waitresses, she collapsed. It took her. She was in a coma. My other buddy was in the hospital 3 days. Like 6 of the people in there, like wasn't in every shot, like fucking were in the hospital.
Psychotic shit.
So like
to do that to somebody,
dude, people are fucked up, like what they'll do and stuff. So like, long story short is like I'm fucking uber paranoid about that shit. As soon as they told me what happened, I was like, man, you guys got dosed.
Yeah, it was
I know it's getting to. I used to work security in San Francisco, and there was a dude that had the club we were working at. There was basically something bad had gone down. The police came and interviewed us that this girl had been drugged at the club, and basically some guy pulled her out and ended up raping her. And so they came and we were like, no, we won't see anything. You know, we didn't really know anything. But then, of course, you become like hyper focused and vigilant watching this shit. And we ended up all of a sudden observing a girl acting like she came with her friends. Next thing you know, she's falling down, acting all crazy. And there were these fucking 2 dudes that were like hanging out near him, kind of predator-ish style. And so like we see it going on. I remember we go like kind of scoop the girl up and we're like, hey, you should take your friends out of there. And the dudes are there. And we ended up escorting those guys out the back.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, it was a bad deal for those
dude.
guys.
I remember grabbing a guy, and like, because you don't know unless you get triggered as a security guy in a club, you don't know who's come with somebody who just met somebody. Yeah. Like people get awfully amorous without knowing anybody right away sometimes, and whatever, and everything's great. But like when you see people that are clear, you got markers, and you're like, oh, their body's not moving right. Okay, so then you're watching her or whatever, dancing with a guy, and I don't know if that's her brother. They've come together. I don't know if I don't know anything, man. And you can't really say anything. You can't be like, and I would straight up threaten dudes. I grab dude by the neck, put him on the wall, go, you're gonna take her out right now. She's all fucked up. Like, and then he goes, yeah, but whatever, that's my business. I go, motherfucker, it's my business. And if I find out that if there's anything that comes back, I'll fucking find you, dude.
We ended up,
I don't know that it helps, but
we ended up having these dudes up, and they had like 3 bottles of Visine.
Yeah.
So they'd obviously been putting something, whether it was Visine, whatever it was, in a Visine, and then kind of going over and squirting it in people's drinks. So we find this, and this was good because this was the mid '90s, pre-cell phones, a lot of this stuff. So, but needless to say, that thing got we basically escorted those guys.
But there's a good chance that
those guys were
highly probable, and probable they got priors.
Yeah, well, and they were bad people, but I mean the thing which I always was good in that situation. I was young, but the guys I all worked with were all fucking bad dudes. Yeah, and stone sober. So like, hey, I'm here doing this job. Nobody drank it. It was like, you know why? Because fucking you do anything stupid, somebody's gonna throw a punch. Like everybody's got to be on fucking deal. And it was one of the best experiences and one of the worst experiences, because from the day I worked in the clubs, I don't think I ever drank, because I was like so disgusted the way people acted.
It's amazing.
And then when you leave, I was like, I can go back to drinking, but I was so fearful of like being that fucking guy.
Yeah.
You know,
I always thought too, man, whenever I'd see, like you talk about like going to the hospital or whatever, God bless the first responders.
Yeah, for
stuff.
sure.
Like, when I really
wage.
It's crazy. I mean, or ER docs or nurses, like people that are seeing the tragedies that come in, and just through folly, just through people like having a good time, being drunk and stupid or whatever, or through some malicious shit, whatever it is. Like, I think of like a friend of mine's a cop, and he's like, well, you got a sense like this and that. And I'm like, I wouldn't be a great cop, but whatever. But like, and I started thinking about it, and then I heard about an accident, and I was like, there's no way I could be a first responder to an accident and would see some kid ripped in half from, or what, like, I'm not trying to have, I got enough images in my head. I don't need that. I don't have that kind of thing. And I think my friend is in Iraq. She's a medevac pilot. She's a beautiful blonde girl, and she flies Black Hawk helicopters, right? Like, it's kind of a G. And she flies a team of 5 people in medevacs. It's only special forces dudes right now because we're pretending we're not at war, I guess, in northern Iraq. But
no, we're just operating in.
It's crazy. Guys dying every day, like whatever. But like they don't have guns. You know what I mean? They have a sidearm or whatever, and maybe an M4 or whatever it is. But it's not like it's a gunship.
No.
And they don't have anybody that's a safety for them. They fly into hot zones and pull guys out. And she pulled a guy that had unexploded ordnance through his body. And they're like, you want to take him? And she's like, I got to do it. Everybody, yep, we're good. Put him in. And she's like, I've never, but like that kind of thing, it's like, I would be way more comfortable putting bullets through people all day long than that. Like, it seems like there's so much invested in that instead of just strafing and walking through it or whatever. It's like, I don't know that I could do that, man. That's a special kind of godsend, those folks.
One of our good friends, he trains with us. He's one of the local sergeants around here for the PD. He comes and works out with us. I did his back rehab when he was all fucked up, but he stopped by this morning, went to breakfast. And it's pretty interesting, like the state at which they are at now with like the body cameras and cell phones and the way people are treating these guys. He goes, in essence, they've really taken the ability to act a lot away from these guys. He goes, things that we would have been more involved in later. Now it's like,
maybe hands off.
Yeah, hands off. He's like, literally pull a kid over, almost gets hit on PCH on his fucking skateboard. And like pull him over, like talk to him about, hey dude, don't fucking die. And his fucking buddies are putting themselves, what are you on him? And he's like, hey,
yeah,
I'm not fucking arresting him. I'm trying to fucking talk some sense into him so he doesn't get fucking killed.
Or I would arrest him and go, you're putting everybody at risk. Every driver here, they're at risk of swerving out of the way and caught you. You're right now, you're a terrorist to the goddamn highway, you dumb fuck.
No,
take your skateboard and go home.
It's for all the technology and for all the advances, and we think we're doing all this great. I mean, I think it ends up fucking us over because what it
in some ways. But as soon as there's transparency everywhere, and I think as long as everybody is transparent, it's good because in a way,
then you gotta get rid of the internet.
Everybody's human.
Well,
man,
you gotta
make it all on the internet. Put it all on the internet.
Well, but I mean, awesome. but think about the internet is really people's ability to create a facade. Like think about how many.
It's real.
So think about this. Think about how many jiu-jitsu black belt, uber badass fucking special forces, 6'5", fucking 300 kilo Olympic lifters that fucking also compete in pro bodybuilding are on the internet.
But you know what the deal is? I'm in those micro communities, and I would know a guy that knew that guy if he was real.
Yeah.
So you got to show and prove. You can't pretend you were a SEAL Team 6 guy and not be, because I've got Google.
Yeah.
Or
you can call Andy Stumpf. I mean, my favorite is we met dudes that were like pretending to be. I'll be like, "What's your bud's number?" And be like, "Oh yeah, where do you know?" And like within seconds, you're like, "Come on, dude!" Like, I mean, there's people get outed all the time. I mean, it's like I was at I was at a bar one time, and this dude was we were sitting with a bunch of people, and this girl like brought this guy. She's like, "Oh hey, these guys are NFL players too." And like we looked at the dude, and like the dude like looks at us and was like, "Oh yeah." And so I was like, "Oh yeah, where'd you play?" The guy's like, "Oh, I played D-line for the Redskins." I was like, "Oh, really? NFC East? I played for the Eagles. I played offensive line." You're not a starter because I would know.
Right.
And then the guy was like, I was like, were you a backup? Because I know those guys too. There's really only 7 of them. Like the NFL is such a small community.
Yeah.
Oh, the guy was like, well, you know how it is. And I was like, well, and then he realized like, oh shit, it's kind of like one of those deals. Yeah. The guy was like, oh yeah, I gotta go, and like bolts out. But I mean, he was probably slaying broads left and right off of that fucking line.
Could be.
Girls,
the girls are open to make bad choices when they're alone at a bar.
Yeah, you get a couple drinks.
It's just like a dude with a boner. He never makes a good choice. I mean, not on purpose. You're not purposely going out and devising good choices. You're like, you're gonna caught. It almost shouldn't have such staggering fucking consequences. Like you could have a kid out of that. Out of the thing that feels best in the world. It's like, now I got to do this for the next year.
I got 2 of them. And I got
how shocking was that when they came out and they're like twins? Were you like, holy fuck?
Well, I remember when my wife came home with the ultrasound and she showed me. I'm like, why are there 2 little blinking lights? And she's like, that's because it's twins. I was like,
that was the first you'd heard of it. She told you like that. That's funny.
So my wife competed my wife competed in the CrossFit Games, and she got done. I was having like some real adrenal problems.
She's like, I'm this healthy. You think I'm not going to have twins?
Whatever. So my wife was having real severe adrenal problems. And so adrenal fatigue is linked to birth control and estrogen. So the high estrogen levels. So the doc that we went and saw to kind of help her get through it was like, hey, I want you to go off your birth control for 30 days and see if we can retest you and see how everything goes. So she goes 30 days and then goes back to the doc. Hey, I'm feeling better. And the doc's like, okay, I want to get back on birth control. So what they do is they give you a pregnancy test. So she literally goes to take the pregnancy test and like she like takes out the package and it like turns blue and she's like, I think this one's broken. And the doctor's like, huh. So they throw on the ultrasound and she's like, the babies are 4 weeks old. So she literally got pregnant like that first like week that she was off, and I was like, "How did that happen?" She's like, "I don't know." So now we got two wonderful
They got
little
married
girls.
to John goddamn Wellborn's how that happened.
You can see my two little ones over there.
Yeah.
So and then we got a third one on the way.
Crazy, man.
So
that's the thing when you're a little kid and they're like, here's all the options for birth control. And then you hear like withdrawal. And I was like, that always sounds like the very worst one. I'm like, the thing that feels the very best, when the best part's about to happen,
it's called
you
the
want me to
method.
pull out. Like that seems like that's the worst choice you could make in that position. Like that's the last thing you want to do.
Well, the problem is you always get your hand caught in the cookie jar because you probably stay in a little bit longer than you should. You're like, oh, no.
But do you know what happened? I became an expert at it.
You can time it up perfect.
That's all thanks to pornography. Because now I couldn't imagine coming inside a girl. I just think, well, you're supposed to come all over their tits, face, or ass or something. That's the way that it goes, right? And so I got retrained through the internet. So thanks, internet.
That's why the internet needs to be full transparency.
Full transparency.
You don't have any kids?
I have a 19-year-old that got adopted when she was 2. And I hadn't seen her, strangely enough. I was completely, it was the dark times of the internet. There was this MySpace. And I didn't want to fuck up her family. Like I was in a dark space, and like her mom was married, I think maybe 3 months or 6 months into her life. And then they adopted her. I was like, it was one of those horrible kind of conditions where I was like, I don't know, like none of this is going to feel good. Like, but I don't want her to be fucked up and feel like this is part of, if you guys can have a good, stable life and that's it. Like, and it's like rad, I guess. I don't know. Like, and I'm a minimum wage worker and just out of, a federal detention center. And I didn't really have any success at following through with much. And so they did a full adoption and all that. And then when I went on The Ultimate Fighter, I guess, and it was right around that time, and there was somebody in my family had a good friend of theirs that needed like a bone marrow transplant or something, and they were getting rejected. And they're like, you need it to be closer than cousins, or you need it to be almost mimicking your bone marrow kind of thing. And it scared me, and I thought, man, little Olivia is out in the world and maybe she'll need me sometime. And I don't know. And I don't want to fuck up her life, and I don't want to be upsetting to anybody. And so her mom made like macrame towels or something on eBay. And I searched her name through eBay, was the only way I knew how to find her. And somebody had written a blog about one of the things that she'd gotten from her. And then I wrote that lady an email. I go, hey, I need to connect. And anyway, I got connected with her mom that way. And then I got to see her a couple times, and then her mom got very upset with me, and I didn't see her again until about a month and a half ago.
Oh, wow.
And now I'm teaching her how to drive, and she just moved down to Long Beach, and so we hang out quite a bit and see each other like that. But it's a trip. It's like it's both like a privilege, and it's like I don't know how to really behave. I'm not really like her dad, and then I'm like, but I'm the dopest dude you'll ever meet, and I can help you in life. Like it's like, and so like
lessons learned.
I
You're
know,
like, dude,
I've got stuff locked in. If you want to know, I can help with almost anything. And if I don't know, I know somebody that does. And that's not just braggadocio. That's like fucking, I got results in the bank. And so I feel good in a way that I'm in the best possible place I've ever been in my life to be able to be useful to somebody else. Whereas before, maybe I wouldn't have been anything but a miserable example. I don't know, Yeah. But yeah, that's what it is. And so that's
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you got a chance. I mean,
dude, it's so nice. It's the first time it's ever felt good, John. It's the first time it's ever felt like, because it's always been like my life. I've worked really hard to get it clean and to be like my life's pretty transparent. And then this is this one thing where I'm like, there's just no good choices in that. I don't know what I could have done better, or what I should have done, or what if this was right or that's right. It was like this ambiguous kind of thing that was dark, and now it seems like it's clear.
You did the kind of the least selfish thing, which is like, hey, I'm probably won't be the best person around, so like there's a better opportunity. And I think other people are like so worried about themselves. Like it was like having kids kind of puts a lot of shit in perspective. Like like we fucking daily fight the battle. I joke that like we're like Beowulf, always fighting the good fight, like always constantly battling against like the fucking just bullshit that we deal with on a daily basis. And like I come home and then like you're like pull up and you watch your daughters literally run out naked into the street to like meet you at the car, and they're out there like waving at you, and I'm like, let's go put some clothes on. They're like, am I, like no clue.
Like, it's hot. We're in California.
Yeah, they were like, why are you wearing pants? You know, and like my neighbors drive by, and I like, like you see them, and they're like over there like fighting the dogs for their toys, and it's like the existence, and you see everything, and you're like, all right, this puts a lot of shit in perspective. Like, let's go be dad and go play and have a good time. And the other thing too is, much like you, I'm like, hey, it doesn't matter what you want to do in this world, whether it's athletics, anything. I either know somebody,
right,
or like I can call somebody, or I can help you. Like it doesn't matter what it is. Like I mean, I got friends, like in the fight world, the football
and
world.
I'm not gonna blow smoke.
Like
I'm not gonna pretend if I don't know.
Like we got friends at NASA. Like you want to be an NASA? We got people. So like I think what is so cool about the journey, and like my brother asked me this once. He was like, like how many people have like a roadmap for a lot of this stuff, and one of my pet projects is this idea on like how to develop athleticism, and like is there something that you can do early on with your kids from like day one up until maybe 6, 7, 8 years old, like to influence them in terms of like helping them become more athletic, and
especially when you look at the design of the human body in that way, and like through certain ages, things become implanted and impact that body to where they're transcendent for the life of that body, right? And like at this age it's this, at this age it's this. We're best apt to learn these things that'll stay with us forever.
Well, like food's a case in point. Like if you like can basically create like a perfect diet for a kid that they eat up until, let's say, 3 to 5 years old, and all of a sudden at that point, like so many of those genetic things are already set that even if they were to not be as
they're going into public schools and they're going to eat garbage.
Yeah, or it's going to be exposed to them, but it's not as kind of harmful at that
now,
age.
I hear a lot of people like running a gym, and when I was more involved in it, there'd be people that would come up and be like, I'd like to eat like a paleo-like diet or like whatever. But, I've got kids, and so many people use kids as an excuse. So whether that's why they stay in their job, their house, their city, I'm like, they're kids. My dog doesn't tell me when he wants to eat. I'll feed that fucker tomorrow if I feel like it.
And we've dealt with this. So like when, before my little girls knew what was going on, all they knew is what we fed them. Their first meal was a diet of liver and egg yolks. And that's what we fed them. And like, I basically like sat down and we sat with some pretty sharp people, like custom design, like what's the perfect diet
that's
for them?
The thing, because that's what's so cool to me.
And they all eat it. And like, and now they're 4 years old. They still eat that way. Like they eat like, and my wife is, my wife hands down is probably one of the best moms. Like she's a great wife, but like what she does for my kids, like she wakes up at 5 a.m. and makes them these fucking custom lunches.
Right.
Like she'll send me pictures and I'm like, how come I don't get that lunch? She's like, well, you're not a fucking kid. I'm like, but and she sends it, and my wife like at least once a week the teacher will be like, your kids have the best lunches, and it's like it's meat, it's berries. Like she makes these kick-ass lunches, and that's what the kids
you guys
eat.
Just take a picture of yourself at the beach. Have you seen the parents?
Right. And but so my wife is 100% committed. And what's interesting is like guys are kind of like, if your wife is like, my wife's hardline, this is what they eat. And like she always says, like, if the girl's like, well, I don't eat this, she's like, fucking eat and go to bed.
Now listen, that's what I said too. I go like, what is a great seasoning? Hunger.
Yeah. And
they don't have to. You don't have to finish everything, but you're not going to eat you're not going to eat candy later.
Well, and we've run into people all the time like, oh, our kids don't eat it, so we make them a special meal.
Right.
Bullshit. My mom made us dinner, and if you didn't want, like, you don't have to eat.
When do you start?
But I'm not making anything fucking
kids, or when do they go? Well, that pizza slice at school that Mary had, I wanted to try it or something instead of those home lunches. Are you forecasting that already?
Yeah, like we
because that probably won't happen until they're 10 to 13 or something, right?
My one daughter is she's definitely got gluten allergy, and I only know that because like if she eats anything dicey, like I had to change her diapers.
Right.
So like dairy, and she's got more allergies.
Poop tells.
So I remember being like, ooh. But for her, like my other daughter, not so much. But like basically, we're like, hey, we don't eat that stuff, and I explained to them why we don't eat that stuff. And so they're pretty funny, and they're like, no, we don't eat that stuff. So like kids will be out there like, we don't eat that sugar, we don't do this.
It's just training. It's like very much like a lot of, I don't know, probably the same. Like a lot of my friends, 35-ish-year-old women had like breast cancer scares in the last couple of years, and then the doctors, I said, well, why is that? They go, well, I asked my doctor. He goes, it's the first, one of the first ones that have been on birth control since we've been having our first period. And so that changes your estrogen levels the whole time of your life, and that speaks to cancer. And like Gladwell wrote a great book, and he talked on it in one of his chapters. I can't remember which one it was, but really interesting, the science behind that, and that's what's happening. Like, and right now we're seeing the kids that have been on brain medication for a year, when we're seeing the effects of this. But like right now, we also have this great opportunity to be the first parents in a way that are like really intentionally feeding our children instead of just getting the job done of making lunch kind of thing, And so none of us were thoughtfully fed ever. Like, no, I don't know anybody that was thoughtfully raised and goes, well, I want you to have these good body mechanics for when this happens. It's like, well, maybe when he's older, we'll play baseball or something. It's never like thoughtfully.
That's how we were raised. But now we have a situation where, like, obviously we would look at the meals, but even with my kids, like all the things we work on, like all of like, hey, we're going to do this. I create all of these little environments because I know where it kind of leads to and what the master plan is.
Yeah, being a parent is being a coach.
Yeah. I mean, that's all it is. I mean, like, so we talk about this stuff, but there's also a weird thing. And I don't know, my wife's pregnant with a boy right now. So I'm kind of interested to see if there's a difference, because with little girls and women in general, like if they don't want to fucking do it, there's no talking them into it.
Right.
Like my one daughter, I can kind of coax. My other daughter puts her foot down and she's not doing it. She's like, I'm not playing any of your tricks, old man. And but I hope, like with a son, I can be like, here's the deal. Like, because Luke, when we found out we're having a boy, Luke and I sat here and we laughed, and he's like, we're gonna give this kid the best combo skill set in the world.
Yeah.
He's gonna not only be fit, he's gonna lift weights, he's gonna be strong. We're gonna let him play the guitar, because if you play the guitar, you can totally pull chicks. And like all these things.
Guitar, sing, gotta be acrobatic.
Yeah, he's gotta be acrobatic. He's gotta be able to dance. He's gotta be able to move. Like he will be this dude, and all of a sudden, like people will he'll be like 18 years old, and like he'll be like have all these talents and be able to do stuff and just slaying broads left and right. Yeah. And he'll be like, my dad, almost like he was putting me in a position to slay hot broads. So I'll be like, yeah, what do you think, dude?
Yeah.
What do you think?
It's
this was an accident,
man. It's interesting. Like people. They often think, well, we'll just let it be whatever it is, and like, or whatever it is they like. They're developed their own taste, and it's like, it's kind of, that's not what discipline is. And like the best thing in my life has been where I've gone, oh, discipline is that's the thing that makes the difference between sucking and not sucking at life. And it's like you're either disciplined by somebody, or you become self-disciplined in a way, and you put yourself.
Yeah, but nobody's so it's very hard for people to develop self-discipline without being disciplined beforehand. So like if you lack discipline, all of a sudden you found something that gave you discipline and instilled self-discipline in you, whether it was the fight stuff or you realize you need a life change. And I mean, I've never, and this is I'll wrap with you offline, because I think you totally switched on with this stuff. But I started going through, and like basically all the people in our network, I just started interviewing them with a bunch of questions on this kind of child development. And the one thing which was universal in all the successful people I ran into, not a single one of them was like, God, my parents were so easy on me.
Right.
Everybody that I know that was like very successful, whether it was an athlete, whatever, was like, God, my parents were fucking hard on me. They demanded a lot. Yeah. And like at certain points it felt like a lot, but like I knew I could live up to it. Like I had a chance to talk to our good friend who's a real prominent doctor. And I asked him, I was like, was there, you got a bunch of kids, this, I mean, is there anything you do? And he kind of like took his glasses off and rubbed his eyes. He's like, I was too hard on my kids. And he's like, I regret as a grandfather looking back thinking I'm too hard on them. And I'm like, would you go back in time and change that? He's like, not a fucking chance.
Yeah.
He goes, that regret that I have knows that I was hard on my kids to get them where they needed to be. And now as a grandfather, I regret it, but I would never go back and change it.
It's one of the biggest things I had as a gripe. And I thought, the thing that your parents want more than anything is to know that you're going to be, they know in a broader way than you could ever know that the world is a hard, dark motherfucker in a lot of ways. Like they know that, and they go, I want this person, and they know it can be beautiful and enriching too, but they just want to know I created a human that can succeed and take care of themselves in these aberrant conditions. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. It's like, that's what that speaks to. I think it's like, yeah, dude, like I don't want to watch. Like, I think the hardest thing about raising a child would be like looking and going, I don't want her to fall down and skin her knees. I don't want that. But you know what? Motherfuckers need scars. And if you don't have it, you don't know that hurts, and you don't know how to stand up, and you got to learn to stand up.
Well, and that, and also like creating the right environment. Like, like if I, like your parents are, it's kind of interesting. Like as a parent, you have to be kind of the mastermind, almost the architect.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like there's certain people, like you can't, like for example, like, yeah, I mean, I could teach my kids some things, But at the end of the day, you have to go out and find people that help reinforce what you're teaching. Like if I had a son and I brought him to you and I was like, hey, I want to teach him some MMA stuff, even though I know how to fight. Like, yeah, this is important to me. I can do it, but he has to hear it from like, it's almost like a child has to hear it from like all sides. And it's like one voice becomes that parent like this, but when they start hearing it, there's a cohesive message. And I think where a lot of people fuck up is when they get mixed messages, because kids aren't smart enough to really delineate. Like they can delineate who's real, who's honest, and who's for them and against them. Like kids are incredible at knowing like who's in their corner and who's not. But like I think they have a tough time delineating like what's a good message and a bad message. So it's almost like
distinguishing judgment.
Well, they don't have the mental capacity. So then as an adult, I could be like, hey, fucking Tate's switched on cat. Like we're on the same boy. If I take my son there and he works with them, he's going to instill the values, the hard work, and the traits that I want or I think are most necessary for him to help out. Because I mean, at the end of the day, and you know this, dude. Like, what do you really know about yourself if you've never been in a fight or a real situation? I mean, that's straight up Fight Club. And I think why that movie spoke so much is like, how do you really know about yourself if you've never been in that fucking like life and death, that struggle, that situation? And how many people have not been in that situation is fucking amazing to me.
It's crazy. I can always tell, man, like the guys that are really entitled, douchey fuckers, I'm like, it just dawned on me, like, he's never been hit in the mouth. And he's never had a consequence. Like to his fucking mouth yapping. And thinking about that, I look at that stuff like everywhere. All the dudes that I look at, like, and because Jim's bringing all kinds of dudes, you see people everywhere, and I'm like, that is one mediocre, low-performing son of a bitch over there that thinks he's awesome. Why would he think that? He has no reason to think that.
How many people too have rolled in and been like there, and they like kind of acting like completely unfriendly?
Sure.
You know, like when we rolled up to do the podcast, I saw you sitting there eating orange. I sat down. I was like, "Hey, what's happening?" I'm John. Happy to meet everybody. You're like, "Hey," you were like, "Hey, do you want something orange?" I'm like, "I'm good." Or it was, I was like, "Oh, I'm good. I'm eating orange." But like, let's hang out. Like that in itself shows confidence. Or how many people walk over and like it's always interesting to see like the dynamic of people. Like either they're intimidated, so then I'm intimidated. I'm gonna act cool, and you're like, "Hey, man, I'm just here to fucking eat orange." Right. Yeah,
it's a trip, man. I look at that and all the stuff we think we need. Like going back to that thing, like when I remember telling a dude, like he's like, well, I really need, if I get this job, like so much hinges on this. I'm really worried about this. And I'm like, dude, I hope you get the very best job that you think that you need. I hope you get all the pussy you think you need, all the money, the car. I hope all that shit comes so you can find that that's not what you lack. That's not the emptiness, man. And until you get all that shit in spades, you kind of don't know, like, oh, there's a bigger boat that we're in here. This isn't it at all.
Dude,
you know?
I saw
so many guys never see that. There's never an awareness that pops and they go, oh, fuck, dude, I'm on the mountain and I can see other shit now.
I worked and played with so many dudes that had this empty void, and they thought that buying more shit, this brand new stuff would like fill the void. And like it would give a momentary excitement, and then it would go away. So then what they had to do is keep buying more and more expensive, more fucking ostentatious bullshit, and just to try to fill the void. And it never fucking worked.
That's the sickness when you hear guys that sign for $60 million a year, and you're like, how's he bankrupt 4 years later?
Yeah, and we've seen it where like people just like, and I watched it, and like I remember, dude, I was I wrote a blog about it, but. When I lived in Philly, I used to ride with these dudes that were ex-pagans and helped me build my first bike. And we're just like fucking best dudes in the world. And we were down in Daytona Beach for bike week.
Depending who you are.
Yeah. If you're friends, it's good.
There's other guys that have different references.
Yeah. I'm sure there's other people that don't have the same relationship I do. But me and one of the guys, we were down in Daytona Bike Week. And we rode up to this little spot called Peggy's.
Hot girls everywhere. I hear it's awesome.
Daytona Bike Week was pretty awesome. So we ride our bikes up, and like on the marquee it says like Van Sant Band, and we like walk in, and it's Leonard Skinner playing their warm up show because they're going to play on the beach in Daytona.
You are old.
The next night, right? So we walk in, and like I literally walk in, and there's like 5 fucking drunk bikers. There's like a trailer next to the stage where dudes are getting tatted. And like we walk in, and all these fat bikers sitting at picnic tables, and I'm walking in, and I'm like, it's fucking Leonard Skinner, fucking play, fucking
so crazy.
And we walk in, and they finish, and like the dude plays Simple Man, which is like one of my favorite songs. And I sat there drinking beer, like lit with these fat bikers, these dudes getting inked up.
Kind of doesn't get better than that.
It was fucking one of the best, and it was like one of the best experiences of my life because like that song, when I'm sitting there, and I'm like, it's all about being simple. Just be a simple man. And then that next night we were, they played in front of like 100,000 people on the beach in Daytona. It was this kick-ass deal, but we got to see them like their warm-up.
Private
show. And it was private show. And like that song to me was like everything as I was in the
That's
NFL.
Beautiful, John.
Whenever you saw this shit, like all like the dude who, I joke with these guys, I was at my locker one day and the FedEx guy showed up and this dude had bought like 25 pairs of fucking 24-inch rims, and the FedEx guy came in with 50 fucking rims stacked all around his locker, and they were like $2,000 a piece. So he bought like $100,000 in rims because he get tired of cracking his rims because he was driving around on little rubber band tires in his fucking Escalade and going over fucking bumps. And like I remember being like, just be a simple man. Just drive a pickup truck. Like,
and you know what?
Be simple.
How many rims do you need to equal an experience of sitting there drinking a beer, listening to Leonard Skinner with a couple of guys?
Yeah.
Like there's not enough fucking rims, dude. That's my point. There's not enough
on the rigid chopper that we built in my buddy Billy Bob's garage.
That's the thing, is there's not enough. Whatever that external shit is, there's not enough of that to fill that up. Like that's the story. Like,
you gotta realize
it's the experience. It's the experience.
They always say you never regret the things you did.
It's like you. There's how many guys come up to you and go, well, they say the most diminishing, most disrespectful thing ever. Well, it's easy for you.
Oh, yeah.
You're this kind of guy or that or whatever, right? And it's like, but you look at it's like how you confront the experience. Like it could also be, fuck, if I don't get signed this next year, my life falls apart. That's a thing that comes into whether you're an athlete or whatever you're doing. Like that's a thing that on these things when there's an expiration point to whatever it is that you're doing because your body's not going to hold up or whatever the thing is. What if I get hurt? What if you obsess on that stuff? That's a horrible way to walk through the day. And if you got a lot of days like that, your life sucks then. But like then you look at it another way and you go, well, here I am now. If I hadn't have gotten released or whatever at that time or hurt or whatever it is that your exit was, the thing is, there's more great stuff to happen. That thing of scarcity of like, this is the only good thing happening. It's like, no, maybe it gets better and better and better forever.
But it isn't really go back to like, people really, and we talked about, it earlier, people govern their lives on fear. And I think like everything is fear-based. Like I'm not going to do this because of this or this or this. I mean, everybody lives within this kind of bubble of fear instead of being like, hey, you know what? I'm going to pack up my fucking car. I'm going to make this fucking adventure. I'm going to go here. I'm going to do here. And I'm not going to be fearful of what happens. And at the end of the day, like, don't be a piece of shit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like people like ask me like, oh, what's it like having kids and being a dad and all that? I'm like, just don't be a piece of shit. Like,
dude, that's the
be good to your wife, be good to your kids, like fucking come to work. Like, don't fuck people over. Just like, don't be a piece of shit. And I think like people, like when you say it to them like that, they're like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, man, like most of the people that are fucked up in this world, like if you talk to them and, like have these negative relationships because their parents were either didn't have the ability to like, weren't mature enough to realize like, hey, this might be fucking up my kid.
Right.
Or were so selfish that they couldn't fucking get out of their own ways.
Yeah.
But like at some point you're like, hey, you know what? Like I want my kids to fucking grow up fucking happy, healthy. I want them to have a great environment. If anybody fucking hurts them, I got no problem fucking, fixing that problem.
I think they do a thing like they self-regulate you in a way. I would think like I noticed the other, like I had dinner with Olivia last week and it's like I didn't swear, and everybody that swore, I became hypersensitive. And I'm not a guy that is like that I don't walk through my life like that. I've never ever fucking thought of that ever before, right?
It's a parental like defense mechanism where instantly I become like it's kind of switched up. Like, and I like just an example. One of my good buddies, who's a former pagan, he was at a deal, and he had been out for years, and he like saw some dudes that were HA guys rolling up on him, and they like kind of recognized him as like kind of a deal, and he was like standing there, and he's like, he was with his son, and he's like, honestly, he's like, if these guys come near me, I would put a fucking screwdriver through this guy. And he's like, he goes, I don't give a shit about me, but he's like, and we do it too. You go out with your kids, and all of a sudden you become this like instant deal, being like, if anybody here moves too fast, I'm gonna fucking slip
crazy.
out.
I had a thing swell up in me. Like I was like, we were at a coffee shop, and because Olivia hadn't really driven, and I was like, well, do you have a learner's permit or what? Like, you're 19, like, let's fucking make this happen. And she goes, yeah, I've got a driver's permit. She's like, I just nobody let me drive the car. I'm like, I just put it in park, and I got out, and I walked. I was like, you're driving. Let's take me to a coffee shop. And we get there, and some dude comes up, and he looks at her, we're waiting for coffee, and it wasn't even horrible or anything, but it's just some fucking big sketchy son of a bitch, and I'm like, who fucking Really? Like,
I didn't
do you know
grow
who I
this.
am?
I didn't grow this beard on accident.
So
this is
crazy.
a disguise.
I'm thinking like it chew right through his neck. Like, and I shocked myself and how I felt about it. I was like, that's pretty odd. Like, and because I'd had a lot of different rages, angers, ideas, thoughts of violence. It's never been the violence that bothered me, but it's I never felt like that before. Where I was like, oh no, and that'll happen. I'm 100% sure. Like, you're fucked.
But I'm gonna have to drag him outside because I don't want my daughter to see this.
Well, it's like the parental instinct. I mean, you think about like the genetic shit you're researching now. I mean, there's got to be some sort of element to that when we're all primal in that
for
that
sure.
sense.
It's pretty interesting. Within like 3 minutes, a baby will be able to recognize the mother. Like, so like as soon as the baby's born, they like give it to the mom. And I remember my wife, like, she had a C-section. She was like hysterical that when the baby's there, she's like, if something happens, you have to hold them. You have to promise me this thing. And I was like, don't worry, everything's gonna be fine, you know. But like all of a sudden, the dude like slices your wife open and like reaches his whole arm and starts yanking these kids out, and you're like, fuck, this is fucking Mutual of Omaha, dude. This is crazy. And but like that kind of deal, like that kind of imprinting, like and it's a weird deal. Like I always think like you look at your kids and you can see. Like you, the mom, everybody in there, like there's certain traits within them that like, and it's totally like, I can identify my kids specific to different traits that they have that I know within my family.
And do you think that's some like, Craig Bueller shit when he was talking about there's more than the 5 senses? And
Dr. Bueller has like 16 senses. So we have a good friend of mine, this guy, Craig Bueller is, he has a deal called AMIT, Activation Muscle Integrated Technique. And he's up in Salt Lake City. He's a witch doctor.
Yeah, it's like the closest thing
is the closest you're ever going to meet to a witch doctor. So he's the guy when like doctors fail, everybody fails, and nobody can fix you in terms of injury. You go see Craig Bueller, and like the Dr. Bueller will fix you. And like so, like at my darkest moment. So when I retired from the NFL, the reason I retired, it was an injury, but it wasn't it was an acute injury. It was like a chronic, like my body stopped working on me and I could no longer do my job. So like I hurt my knee, I chipped off a piece of bone, and like it was because like every muscle in my body was just shut the fuck down. Like 10 years of abuse, I didn't know how to fix it, and I was fucked. So I come home, CrossFit asked me to do this thing, and I was like mentally fine, but my body just literally, I couldn't get it to do the things I used to be able to do. I used to be able to run and move, and instantly now I'm like trapped in this like broken body. And I called up a good friend of ours, Tom Ankledon. I'm like, Doc, something's fucking wrong with me. Like, I just like things like, trying to grab this, like just like I can't, like something's wrong, like neurologically or physically, something's just not wired up. And he's like, man, there's only one guy that I know that is like the last ditch effort, and we got to go see him. So I'm like, well, where do we go? He said, we got to go to Utah. So he meets me on a plane. We go to Kaysville, Utah, outside of Salt Lake City. And we show up at this guy's like little clinic, like it's fucking a strip mall. And I'm like, where the fuck are we going?
Crazy.
And he's like, just trust me. So we go in, it's like after hours, and he's like, full deal. We come in, he starts working on me, and he starts putting me in different positions. And like, he was like, okay, I'm going to test your bicep. And he's like, here. And like, he would like be holding one finger. He's like, resist me. And I couldn't resist him.
Right.
And so he was like, all right. So I'm laying there, and he goes, it kind of rolls over my neck, and he kind of hit me here. And instantly, as if the lights went on. So my Atlas was out, was the biggest one. And so it was like everything was dark, and he hits me, and all of a sudden the lights come on. And I'm like, oh shit, he's like, feeling better? I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay, let's start. So for 3 days he worked on me. And
what's the Atlas?
The Atlas is
a little bone on top of your cervical spine that like your head kind of pivots on.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he ends up fixing that, and then he basically tested me for did muscle testing and found 160 muscles he tested. I think like over 120 of them were shut down and not working. And so he started rebalancing me, getting me to work. And I literally got off the table 3 days later, and I like walked outside, and I was like, I could run through that fucking car. I could jump over it. And went back and like started training. And then over the course of 3 years, I go back and see him. And we got to the end of the journey, and it was like I regained myself in this. And I go see him a couple times a year, but I'll walk in and like Olympic athletes, people travel from all over the world. He was in Tim Ferriss's book, The 4 Hour Body. They call him Dr. Two Fingers. He is, but as I've spent, fucking hours upon hours upon hours
so cool,
with Dr. Bueller, and I brought Luke to see him, but he's like, most people have 5 senses, and Dr. Bueller's like, I actually have probably 10 or 12. and that he can sense like kind of auras. I mean, it's pretty like you got to believe in that stuff, and I really don't believe in that shit. But seeing what Dr. Bueller had done for me and being around him was night and day. And I had gone up and seen him, and I showed him pictures of my daughters, and he's got like 6-8 kids. He's a Mormon and has a bunch of kids. And he like looks at a picture of my daughter, and he's like, "What's up with the blonde one?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Is she eating okay? How is she?" And I'm like, "She's actually cries a lot. She's real colicky." And he's like, "Something's wrong with her." I'm like, "What do you mean?" So you can tell off the pictures. I can see.
Like, take it easy, Doc. Jesus Christ.
So she was 2 months old, and she had been crying and had some problems and was kind of colicky and wasn't eating. And was just real angry.
You're like, send over the kid.
And I fly home, get my wife, fly back, and we bring in my wife and the kids. And he like, you know, I mean, you got to really trust somebody for them to like work on your 2-month-old baby. So he brings it in. He goes, her neck is out. So she was a twin and was stuck up high, and her neck was kind of twerked. So her shoulders were like this because her neck was in so much pain. She was doing this. So Doc Bueller sets her down and is like, "Okay, I want you to hold her waist." And he literally kind of like pulled her head and kind of like adjusted her like this. And all of a sudden it kind of went boom, and her shoulders dropped. And literally he stood her up or sat her up, and she like stood up, and all of a sudden she was like 3 inches taller because her neck had been so jammed here that she was like this. What if she'd stay that way? And so Doc Bueller, based off of the picture, and he's like, "Dude, we've adjusted our kids. I do everybody for the church." And he's like, "She just got her neck jammed up." And that baby went from being like a colicky, crying baby.
Yeah,
dude,
I feel like I'm a little sore right now.
If I lived and like within like 2 hours, I would see him every day. I'd be like this. I'd be like, "Come on in."
How crazy is your wife that she's like, "All right, John, we'll do it. Like, I'm going to take my children to what you describe as a witch doctor."
My wife, like I said, my wife is one of the most amazing people. Great wife,
lady right there.
Incredible wife. She is like
for sure. She had a pistol in her back. She's like, "All right, we'll see."
No,
she cool.
Because I mean, she was with me at like my darkest moment, and she watched the change that Dr. Bueller helped me. So she's like knows about it, and then you know, but like from like the food and the training stuff, she's hilarious on things. She's like, "I just trust you on all that." She's like, "You geek out on that shit, and I trust you on. That's why I married you." So like all like the training, the food, or anything that has to do with it, she's like, "I either know that you know it, or you can make a phone call to the world's expert to talk about it."
So funny, dude. I had to do a re-up on the certification for CrossFit.
Oh yeah,
because I'm an affiliate owner or whatever, and so whatever, and there's a dude there that was one of the guys, and the nutrition thing comes up, and I'm like, "You guys are still slinging zone over here. You guys still on that?" Like, and they must have a deal or something. I don't know what goes on, but then I go, "We know that that's not really the best," and people talk about that. There's like holes in that. There's all kinds of reasons why. There's a bunch of other options that are either equally good or better with better food choices that the zone doesn't really talk about a lot. And then dude is like, "Well, married to the fittest girl in the world though, and she changed her zone diet, and then it dialed her in, and she won the CrossFit Games." I'm like, "Well, I guess you can't argue with that. Like, you got the Lipson, and so he got the right. You know, like you can't. That's the right guy to give this talk because you can't really argue with the fittest girl in the world."
At the end of the day,
what's your take on that?
Is she the fittest girl because she's eating the zone diet? I mean,
on that day, yeah. Sure.
So I mean, like, is the magicking or the magically balancing of macronutrients gonna like somehow protect you from something? I mean, I don't know. I think at the end of the day, regardless, you know, and we're fighting this fight right now because the zone was all based on this, like, hey, like here's my macronutrient ratios. Right. If I can. It doesn't matter what I eat as long as I can zone proportion out and I can stay in the zone.
Right.
So when that was first presented to me, and I remember being talked about the zone, to me, nothing trumps food quality. That, you know, if you eat good food, it will always lead to better gains. And I watch guys that ate food quality. I watch guys that didn't. And the difference for most of the NFL players was nothing because I played with guys that could eat Coke, Cheetos, and fucking chicken nuggets and be 4% and still run fast.
What's his name with all the gold medals from the Olympics? The swimmer.
Yeah.
And it's like he doesn't eat really great quality food, and he's the most winning athlete in the world.
Well, if you also look at him, he's like 6'8", and he's got about a 30-inch inseam, and he's got size 18 feet. I mean, the guy's built for the water.
Yeah.
But I mean, so I thought we fought that fight, and then like it kind of came back now with this like if it fits your macros deal, where
That's
people
so
are
funny.
like the flexible dieting.
It's a bunch of fat girls that are like, I just don't have discipline.
Well, yeah, and it's like
That's basically right. Is that
and,
kind of?
and
Like, maybe that's simple.
I get the idea of like balance in that it's like, well, you can eat these foods if it fits within your macros, so that you don't really have a cheat meal on this. And like I kind of get it, but at the end of the day, like grow the fuck up, take a stand. Like, you know, and own it. If you're gonna go out and you're like, hey, you know what, I want to eat a piece of fucking shake, chocolate cake, forget it. Fucking eat it, then get back to the gym. I don't need you to fucking magically balance my macronutrients.
Isn't it?
And at the end of the day,
and at the end of the day, all those people that do that shit are 23 years old.
Well,
see me at 35, fatty.
Well, then, you know, my comment to Dave Lipson would have been like, so did Camille not eat the zone this year? Because she didn't win.
Ooh.
That would have been my question. If he had been like, well, Married to the Fittest, well, that was last year, but what about this year? So are you saying she didn't eat the zone, or what did she do? Like to me, people that fucking pull out that trump card, to me, is like
correlation is not causation.
It's a huge bat.
It's like so you're saying that before she was doing good when she made the game, she wasn't eating it. Now all of a sudden this one tweak is what she made that you felt made the difference, or you just standing up there because you're teaching it. And like you know, Barry Sears gave a talk that actually my buddy Tom Incledon
he's still alive. Barry Sears is okay.
Yeah, so he gave a talk my buddy Tom Incledon was at, and Doc Incledon's one of the smartest dudes on the planet in terms of this stuff. I mean, he's drug or blood tested like every professional athlete you've ever heard of. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's the guy for blood testing performance and all that out in Arizona. And he was at a conference with Barry Sears, and Barry Sears was getting up and talking about the zone. And he said he lost it when Barry was like, you can take spray butter and put it on a Pop-Tart and still stay in the zone. And at that point, Tom fucking raised his hand and was like, all right, let's get into this shit. And fucking torched him. And it's like, so you're basically telling me that, you know, ingesting these chemicals that, you know, went through all the fucking, you know, basically the chemicals is going to keep this at a performance base. And he's like, it's bullshit. And Tom has blood work on all of these athletes that basically knows that food quality will always fucking trump the fucking magically balancing.
Now, what do you think about, like, when you talk about milk, what do you think about inflammation with milk and that being a cause of that? And how much does that then negate? You know what I mean? Like, there's got to be a balance in there, right?
Yeah.
Well, so are you on the wellness or performance side?
Like, think about like this, inflammation with milk. Now, a certain part of the population genetically is not going to have the adelase to basically absorb and process milk. So those people are known as lactose intolerant. If you're lactose intolerant, you consume lactose sugar. You can't digest it, massive inflammation. There was a genetic mutation X amount of years ago, and like when we got our genetic stuff done, we have, you know, Luke and all of us, most northern white people have the mutation to process lactose. So if you can process lactose and you're consuming dairy, there really shouldn't be massive amounts of inflammation unless you're talking about inflammation from blood sugar spiking with insulin going high, which can cause inflammation. You know, acute inflammation isn't bad, it's recovery, but, you know, cortisol, but you're looking at chronic over amount of time. Vince Gironda had his Stone Age diet, which was a precursor to the paleo, which was what Arnold and all those guys ate back in the 50s. Vince Gironda being the old trainer that a lot of those guys worked at Vince's gym. His diet was, you know, basic paleo diet with copious amounts of raw milk, because raw milk having
been drinking raw goat milk.
Yeah, so it's great for gut health, increases gut biota, like makes for a much healthier gut environment, and increases that. So I think a lot of the problems becomes with milk is either people aren't really designed to do it, or it's so overly processed, homogenized, and a lot of the other problems. So,
or you're already metabolically deranged,
or you're
where
metabolically
it's
deranged.
like you need to first you need to hit that neutral, healthy state, and dairy shouldn't bother you.
It's not what you should do if you're trying to get in shape. You shouldn't start there. If you're already an athlete that's like plateaued a little bit, maybe that's the thing for you.
So, but I mean, I personally like don't really drink a lot of milk. Like we have some cheese and stuff, and like when my daughters, my one daughter's really allergic to cow milk, so we fed them goat kefir, and they fucking loved it. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden they got to be about a year and a half, and my wife just didn't. They were out of it one day, and they didn't notice. And I was like, well, don't buy it anymore. And my daughters had never asked for it. They don't really care for it.
What do you think the difference with when you go raw or regular milk? Is there a big varying difference in the result?
Yes.
Huge.
Fucking huge. The difference that we've seen in people that are drinking raw, unpasteurized milk is dramatically. I mean, like, are you going to make gains get bigger and stronger from drinking milk? Because I mean, really, what is milk? It's filtered blood. So it's actually the sustenance that a mother mammal produces to feed her baby mammal, and it's packed full of what's that?
To grow.
To grow. I mean, it's fucking the most highly anabolic substance. So my little girls were born; they were like 5 pounds and 6 pounds. And then they like got down to like 5 pounds and 4 pounds. And my wife breastfed them.
Phase?
Well, yeah. So when babies leave the hospital,
started cutting early.
So when babies leave the hospital, because my wife breastfed, they have a tough time latching, and so they end up losing a little bit of weight. And then they get it. And my wife only breastfed them for 6 months, and I watched those kids in 6 months like triple in size. Like they went from like 5 pounds to like 15 pounds, and like I remember thinking to myself, what the fuck is in there? And I realized
I need those gains. Save a little.
Yeah, I researched milk, and it's so anabolic, and fats, proteins, carbohydrates, all these things.
Right.
So, the other thing which is interesting about cow milk in particular is we've chosen to drink the substance of a mother mammal that's like born at like 180 pounds,
right, and
reaches full maturity in 3 years at 800 to 1,000 pounds, which is like one of the fastest growing, biggest mammals, opposed from one of the slowest growing mammal on the planet, which is us. It's pretty interesting when you look at like, what we've done. But yeah, I think there's a huge difference in terms of there'll be a big strength gain. Those people that drink milk will be bigger and stronger than people that don't drink milk.
You think we'd get more gains if we drank mother's milk from humans than
cow milk?
People were trying it.
And I'll tell you,
seems a little creepy to me.
No,
a little bit weird.
And I believe there's something genetic in us that prevents you from it, because as a man, if you smell breast milk, it'll fucking make you sick. And I think that's something ingrained in us.
Isn't it weird? Because
imagine caveman,
right? Well, at that time when they're breastfeeding, you're like, I'm staying away from.
Well, yeah, because it's a weird smell. Like Kelly Starrett tells this great story about they had coffee and they were breastfeeding. And he was like, oh, puts it in, drinks it, threw up, and he's like, man, but you got to think like in terms of evolutionary, like hungry ass caveman was probably like, fuck those kids, I'm going to suck those things. So there had to be something that turned the stomach.
Just listen to the thing about the Mongols and about Genghis Khan and the first real army to have like warriors on horses and stuff. And like they were like, it was like an army that traveled like 8 or 12 to 1 animals to 1 human, right? And so they would travel 3 or 4 horses for each warrior, and then they'd bring herds of sheep and shit or whatever. But they would cut little cuts in the neck, put their cup under it, let that horse bleed in there, mix it with a little water, and that's how they would sustain themselves for a while.
They also would slaughter the animals, and they would take like sides of meat and they would put it on the back of the horse, and they'd cover it with a burlap sack or whatever they were riding. They would ride it, and the sweat would actually cure the meat, and then they would lift up the sack and cut it off. But I mean, the world's best horse warriors, there's a super, I can pull it up for you, but they went back and they were able to find like the, what is it, like the Y chromosome directly relating to Genghis Khan, which is only passed from like father to son, father to son, father to son. It was like 10%.
Yeah.
Like he and his brothers fathered like hundreds of thousands of children.
50 million people they killed.
Yeah.
50 million.
Oh yeah, I mean that's where the Conan comes from.
But they said
what's best in this world to hear, the wind in your hair, to hear the laments of the women and the children, and fucking kill your enemies.
Yeah, every kid, if they were higher than the turnstile on a wagon, cut their heads off. They're too old to change into our ways, so they just killed everybody. It was crazy. But they said also some of the most the best living that was possible, but it was just unforgiving. Like if your guys, if there's 10 of us and 3 of us get captured, and the rest of us don't go in to save, even no matter what the odds, we all get killed. If 3 of us run away and retreat, and the other don't, and these guys get caught, not only they get killed, but we all get killed too. Everybody, like, no matter what, it's everybody dies.
I go, you go.
Yeah, fucking, it's rad. So, like, you think of what that instills, it's like a ferocity. Like, you get captured, and you're like, well, there's fucking 64 of them, and there's just the 3 of us. And it's like, you go in with a barbarism that is unknown to anybody else except in that situation because you're dead anyway.
Yeah.
That's a freedom to fight in that. Like, crazy. I was thinking about the energies, the doctor. Like, so what's the other 6 or 10 energies that he's got?
His deal was, you know what? If you ever want to go see this dude, I'll go out and see him.
I'd love to.
Yeah,
I was thinking that when you're talking about the baby.
We're thinking about hitting him up.
Yeah,
in the next few months.
We're gonna go out and visit him.
I'd love to go.
Yeah.
it'd be great, man. If these guys want to do this TV show on me, we'll film all. That'd be rad.
Dude, Dr. Bueller is he's one of these dudes that it's pretty amazing. He's
so the way this whole thing was brought up is he was doing some tests on John, and like the way it would work is he'd have you resist very little force, and he would just move John around like a ragdoll, and then he would work on through his two, like I can't even do justice of explaining it, but it would be neural, muscular.
So what he's able to do
skeletal
is that due to injuries, muscles get blocked and they won't fire. And so, like, from a cellular level, it's kind of interesting that, like, for a muscle to fire, it has to be, like, some chemical reactions. And so, for whatever reason, the body inhibits. So, he's able to, through different muscle testing, basically be able to figure out which muscles.
What combination to get it.
And then he has a deal called AMIT, which is, like, a whole system on this. Mm-hmm. And then, based on that deal, he's able to clear the muscle through different pressure points using, like, acupuncture, some chiropractic, and kind of a different tool. And it was created by a guy, Dr. Beardall. And Dr. Beardall was another, kind of interesting guy in that he had, some more kind of available, I guess you could say, senses, and developed this whole practice. And then Dr. Beardall actually got killed in a car accident in the UK. His wife was driving and went on the wrong side of the road. And then Dr. Bueller has taken over and expanded this thing. And Dr. Bueller is literally the happiest I am is when I get to go see him. And he literally, I walk out of there, and if I had met Dr. Bueller earlier in my NFL career, I could have played fucking forever. He was at one point, he worked for the Utah Jazz, John Stockton and Karl Malone. He was their personal guy, and they paid him out of their own pocket. He traveled with the team, and these guys played into their 40s. It was because of Bueller working on
and he could take him with a sprained ankle and put him back in
within minutes.
A severe sprain and put him in minutes. And I guess just wanted to circle back because this is how he got onto this is he cleared the pathways.
Right.
He's like, and it didn't heal it. He's like, wait a minute. He's like, asked John about what he was eating, and we were eating a bunch of red meat or something like that. And what he ended up doing is he had John.
He used some AK, which is applied kinesiology, which is considered witch doctory. But Dr. Bueller is pretty interesting. He knows that if certain muscles won't clear, then there's some environmental issues. Mm-hmm. And so he was like, hey, you're having some problems. This, and he's like, I know that this body part is tied to this, and it's all based on the kind of the acupuncture deal. And he ended up, literally giving me some supplements, putting them in my mouth. He's like,
well, he didn't even put them in your mouth. He literally held them over you.
Oh, that's right.
And it fucking worked.
What?
He just fucking held him over John.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, I'm out. Yeah, all this stuff was hokey until that point.
It's a little hokey.
I'm getting fucking goosebumps because
it's one of those things where I went into it and I don't believe in any of that shit. And but at your darkest moment, you will fucking be open to just about anything.
Sure.
And so Doc Bueller ended up fixing me, and it was the type of thing where I'll come in and and he I probably should go back and see him here pretty soon, but I now know when something's happening to me. We were squatting the other day and my left hip was hurting because I wasn't able to drive my knee out the way, so I was kind of leaning into it, and all of a sudden I couldn't get my quad to fire. And it's and when I talked to Bueller, I'm like, why does this happen? He goes, when you had as much mileage as you had, he goes, shit breaks. He goes, if you brought in a perfect young person and I was able to work on them and fight these things, because you have so much that we have to work with.
A lot of city miles.
But he it was just pretty amazing watching the work he's done.
Crazy.
But and I've sent dozens of people to him, from all over the world, and he's one of those people that can cure it. But I had a terrible deal where I woke up one morning and my neck, I was in so much pain in my neck. Years ago, I took a pretty severe hit and popped out one of the discs, and they had to re-pop it in. But I woke up one morning, and I was I had such bad shooting pain. I took a bunch of painkillers, didn't do it. And I called Doc Bueller, and I was like, Bueller, I got to come see you. I jumped on a plane, and literally I'm driving from the airport to his place, and he had a bunch of students in town for a convention. They were kind of doing a deal, so they needed somebody. They brought me in. Within 5 minutes, it was all gone. But I still had all this residual nerve pain, and they did some pretty interesting stuff for it, and literally I was fine. It was the type of stuff where
clinic.
What's that?
It's cool. He has that he's passing.
And he works with people, with doctors. But the thing is they have to develop like a little bit of like, you know,
awareness or something.
Awareness, yeah. He just has kind of a different perception.
Awareness.
And I asked him once, I was like, you know, can you sense like, because he was talking about like, you know, some people like, you know, diminished life force and kind of these other things. And I was like, well, can you tell if somebody's sick? He's like, I can sense people kind of like this. And I'm like, can you sense good and bad? He's like, I've had people walk in here, and as I put them on the table, I asked them one question. I've had them go up and leave because I knew they weren't like that there was something wrong with them beyond what we would normally.
And he related it to like if you've ever been in a situation or you met a stranger and you're just like you kind of get the chills or like you don't get a good vibe on that, and it's not like instinctive how to respond to it, but you know it's just like he's like I have that, but I understand what these sensations are. I can interpret it into like a thought or an idea, and we just kind of are like, you know, something's a little off about this guy.
Yeah, the brothers I used to play with were funny. They would always blame that, like the guy. They would be like, "Oh man, like the guy can't play." I'd be like, "Why?" He's like, "His curl's just so wrong. His curl's just not tight." Like I was telling these guys a joke that like there was a dude, and I was like, "Man, why? You know, what's up? That guy's all right." They're like, "No, he can't play." I'm like, "Why?" They're like, "His curl's wrong." I'm like, his curl. I'm like, yeah, his curl just doesn't curl right.
And then sure enough,
they're like, man, and like, so that was the joke of like, how was his curl? And they're like, wasn't good. That's funny, man. So I mean, like, it's just
intuition.
Yeah,
like
it's intuition.
It's an intuition that you're not willing to supplant with like social niceties, where you're like, well, I must be wrong because he's with John, and so he's probably a cool guy. Like, but instead, he knows a deeper sense of that. That's what I was thinking when you were describing like, you know, your child being put into your wife's arms and stuff, and like the knowledge of that is probably not just the smell. It's certainly not the sight. It's like there's probably a feel when she gets in a certain energy path that's within whatever proximity to that body. Like, oh, this is where I've been. This is home.
So much shit we don't know.
We don't know anything. That's why when they try to mimic mother's milk, and they're like, we got formula now. It's better than mother's milk. It's like. No. You're not taking into account all that you don't know. The macronutrients are there, but enzymatically, there's so much more going on that's like environmental and everything else. It's like crazy.
We just had a podcast with a guy named Kenneth Ford the other day, and Dr. Ford is one of the advisors from NASA, and pretty much
he's
one of the smartest dudes on the planet. Like he is like one of like the foremost experts in the world in like.
Does he think we went to the moon?
Artificial intelligence. Like this dude's fucking smart. And so he's got kind of put together with Naval Special Warfare and was helping them develop diet stuff to help them with their rebreathers so that these guys could go and actually figure out that like ketogenic diets cure seizures. And so they started creating ketone esters and salts and put these guys in ketogenic states so that these guys didn't have seizures. But then they saw their performance go through. They were smarter, more basically creating super soldiers using ketogenic diets.
Now, when are they going to change the MREs to
that's kind of what they're talking about.
That's basically, yeah, so that's what he was talking about. And then he talked about like traumatic brain injury, TBIs, that if you were to give somebody like ketone salts and they'll basically get their ketones higher, that their brain is not as likely an environment for brain injury.
And do you know why else with that too? Is a ketogenic diet will spur on dopamine production. And dopamine is what gets inhibited a lot of times with TBI, and then you get depressed, and then you're thinking things that aren't really you.
He was talking about like acute dosage.
Also, it raises IGF-1, growth hormone, all this shit. And then after traumatic brain injury, they give them doses of ketones that helps them. And he's like, the single worst thing you can do is give somebody something sugary after traumatic brain injury because it basically kills them.
Crazy.
Which is like giving Gatorade to NFL players, right?
All day long.
And so we were rapping with him, and you know, he's sitting there talking about like, you know, performance, and I honestly don't even know where the fuck I was going.
Well, it was the synergistic genetic relationship between gut biota and your genes.
And so if so he was talking about that everybody, like, so there's 3 to 4 pounds of
gut bacteria
in each person, and that gut bacteria is custom designed for you as you go through the birth canal through natural childbirth. So as it goes through, that's your first exposure to bacteria, and your mother custom designs you your own gut bacteria.
That's integrated genetically
into you.
Never thanked her for that.
So both my girls were C-section because they were both breech.
Right.
So then he was like, well, their first exposure is through the skin, through all these other things.
Doctor's glove.
And that's why my wife was so obsessed about like fucking breast milk. because that's that's how they get all the immunities and everything. So she was like, we got to do it. And, there's like that kind of situation.
It's the best way. There's no other way to do it. If you've got to breastfeed your kids.
So then when I came home and I told my wife what Doc Ford said, and I'm like, you want to get a kid the best opportunity? Probably not going to be a C-section. She's like, fuck, it's going to be painful. But I mean, that's how babies have been born. I mean,
they can remake that pussy too. They can
stitch it back up.
They got science on all that. You know what I mean?
Dude, I feel like we could sit here and talk for like 8 fucking hours. We've been talking for what, 3 hours?
2 hours. No, close to 2.5 hours.
Joe Rogan deep.
Yeah,
it's nice, man. What brought you here?
The only difference is Rogan's usually really high.
A lot of times, yeah. I was listening to it the other day, and he's got some broad on there who was like really a fast talker, and I was like, God damn! I was like, it's catchy. Joe's really talking fast too right now. And then I looked, I had it at 1.5 times play. Or you don't know how to work anything, Tate. That could be also. So
no,
that's the thing. What do you think too about like there's this thing like right now? I feel like there's a fight like almost as dumb as it is between like science and God or whatever, and the one displaces the other or whatever. Like here's things that we don't understand at all and we're pretending we understand. But like the idea of like, people either go to an intellectual course in life or a physical course in life. And I think that's a muted, deficient person if you're one-sided on either end of that. I think you're an asshole kind of.
Well, there's always, I think, this idea that, if you're a scientist and like all these different things, like prove, all these guys like don't believe in anything. I think what is interesting, at least from everything I've ever read and some of the smarter people I've ever talked to, is that this thing isn't an accident, and that they're like, whether you call it God or there's some grand architect.
Sure.
Because the one that always tripped me out was like the Fibonacci sequence and like just some of these things that like there's no fucking way this shit just randomly happens that like, oh, that all of a sudden this fits in. I mean, there's a book that we have over there, which is pretty fascinating. This lady made the claim that beauty is based on symmetry on the face. And there was a doctor, Dr. Marquez, who was a plastic surgeon, who went back and he devised these things called the Marquez masks that were based on symmetry of the Fibonacci sequence on the face. And so he could basically put like a plot lines and basically put this mask on your face and see where your face lacks symmetry. And then he goes through and shows every beautiful person that you would generally assume is beautiful. And the Fibonacci sequence of these Marquez masks fits perfectly on their face. So our eye knows symmetry, and we know symmetry to be beauty. And then this guy was a plastic surgeon, so he could go back and make corrections in people's faces to make them more beautiful was the idea. And like,
I might like a bitch with a gap tooth though.
I read
as long as it's symmetrical gap.
I read that and I was like, fuck. I mean, like there's so much symmetry, like just symmetry, and there's so much information.
There's
like,
balance, and the macro systems mimic the micro systems.
But like, I think it's like the fucking Matrix. Like all of a sudden, you remember they find the dude who was like the architect,
sure,
and he's like a white dude in a room, and he's like, "Yes, Neo, I'm the architect." Like I fucking think that there's an architect
you ever
up there.
Read about like the simulation theory? Like they study it at MIT and shit like that, right?
String theory.
One of my friends is simulation theory. The idea that this is all a simulation game, like Sim City or something like that.
Oh.
And then like some super advanced society is just when you get deja vu, that's a little glitch in the Matrix. Like, I'm like anything could be true. I don't know anything. Is all I know. Like that's the thing is like nothing would surprise me. I mean, that's why I say like Scientology, like I think it's all kind of silliness, like all that shit. Catholicism, like all of it's crazy. Like, we got the thing that's the most popular now. I guess like worldwide, maybe Islam is the most popular, but like Christianity is right up there. It's like regularly priests fuck kids. Like if you were to ask, hey, what's the weird proclivity of a race car driver? You couldn't really say anything. I don't know. They drink beer. I don't know like what it is. Like, but if you go, what is it of a priest? You're like, everybody knows they nail kids, and they hide it.
Yeah,
and that's the weirdest thing
so
ever.
The Muslims.
I know, but I'm saying it's all crazy. Anytime you have repression,
so
you're pretending you're inauthentic. Go fuck yourself with all that shit. That shit is broken. Yeah. That's a broken thing, and me pretending that I know the greatest mystery of all.
Well, that's what basically fucking kind of pulled me, like, and basically my mom too. My mom, that's why we basically kind of like have, don't really practice Catholicism.
Yeah.
Is all of that shit came out where those priests were hurting chillren, and instead of fucking taking ownership and being like, these guys are fucking up.
They're like, we got a
fucking
country
put
club.
them in. And you know what they would do? They would all of a sudden transfer them to different parishes, pay
and you know what
instead of fucking like instead of helping people and fucking protecting them from a bunch of sick fuckers that are hiding within the fucking clergy and basically pushing these people
They would
out
send
to the
their
fucking
kids
world.
back to the same place with them. They're like, well, it'll be okay this time. Trying to get back.
Right? Well, you're right, because the priests
Like, I would do that if it
we're
was
in the
like my
church.
kid was like Michael Jackson wanted to sleep over. I'd be like, you're gonna take one for the team. We're gonna get rich off this one, kid. It's gonna be a bad weekend.
And you know what? Like that point to me is, I was like, you know what? And I remember I was in high school and we were at we went to mass and we were sitting there and there was a visiting father who was like this like super fat dude that looked like super hypertension. Like he was so like fat, just squeezed into this black outfit, and he had this like fake fucking red hair and this like beet red face. And I remember looking at my mom and I'm like, that's one of those fucking guys, that fucking sicko.
Yeah.
And my mom's like, we can't come back to this.
I don't want my spiritual leaders to be out of shape either. I don't want any. All of a sudden your word is suspect to me. I'm like, you can't even control. You don't have a learner's permit for this thing, and you're gonna tell them, you know, some secrets. I'm suspicious.
Well, it's like somebody that's like like the fat fitness guru,
right?
Or the guy that's like over there and you're like,
I thought that about Al Gore when he came out and he's like, yeah, there's all this stuff about, you know, global warming and all that. Made some really cogent arguments, like. Almost you can't deny any of that stuff. I believe, I'm sure, like we for sure affect the global climate here and whatever. But I'm like, you're completely unbelievable because you're 300 pounds. Like you got a huge.
Is that fat?
He was fat as shit when he did that. When he did that documentary that he put out about global warming.
What was it called? The Inconvenient Truth.
Inconvenient Truth. And I'm like, you made yourself like I can't believe you now. Mm-hmm. Which is really a prejudice, isn't it? That's horrible. That's
shame on you.
About me. And shame on you. If you're gonna let your shit go that much, get your shit together. That's gotta hurt. That's a mental problem.
I think it makes it harder, perhaps.
I'm over here trying to not be fucking 300 pounds, you bastards. If I can try, you can try.
Tate, well, you're a big dude. I'm sure you could be 300. I mean,
no, but not healthy. I want to feel good. I'd have titties and shit.
Dude,
not in a good way.
If you were given a ballot for election, who would you vote for today?
Right now, Elon. I'd like Elon Musk.
Elon Musk.
I want somebody smart as fuck. You know, I don't want these guys that are politicians. I'm like, because that was the thing too, like Reagan and all that. They were talking about global warming. They're talking about the Star Wars. Like, I don't know, you don't know this, but like we had a thing in the 80s, and we were gonna stop Russia. They're starving to death. They have rusted silos.
So
no army.
So dude, Ken Jowett, who was one of my Berkeley professors, was Reagan's advisor to Russia. And I took his class at Berkeley, and he gets up and he gives his speech about they are trying to figure out how they're going to beat the Russians because, you know, we're in this arms race. And somebody was like, well, why don't we bankrupt them? And they're like, well, how? And they come up with Star Wars, which is this idea that we're going to create a satellite network that has lasers that'll shoot down things. So they come up with this idea. And then they fucking call in all these fucking smart people and they just start working on it, designing it. Then they fucking leak the secrets that they have this to all of these fucking KGB spies that are in the CIA, different stuff. So they purposely leak it. All of a sudden, Russia hears, they're like, oh, fuck, they got lasers. And they basically bankrupted themselves. And that was the end of the Cold War, that it was this fucking grand fucking scheme.
Came out a little bit right after Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back. They're like, I guess lasers are the thing now.
Yeah, and it totally fucking worked. And Ken Jowett gets up and he gives this fucking talk. Dude, he gets up and gives his talk. And like, it was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, we fucking basically bankrupted the Russians based off of this Star Wars theory, and like, you know, like we were lying about how many weapons we had. They were fucking arms.
They were broken for those people. They're in bread lines. They were bereft. They were done. Yeah. There's a great book, Merchants of Doubt, that goes into all that kind of fuckery, which is rad. Mm-hmm. And it's like they're the same scientists that were doing the Star Wars program. Before that, their big push was that there's no correlation between cigarette smoking and cancer. It's actually good for you. Yeah. What was the other thing they did? They did that there was no global warming, that man doesn't have anything to do with that. The fracking is cool, that there's no adverse effects. Like it's like that's whatever corporate fuckery is out there to rob the American public of dollars through taxation and revenue is gone. And there's a group of scientists that are saying, yep, that's the shit. It's amazing.
It's crazy shit, man. We do have to
let's close it off.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
You know it, Tate.
This will be our 7-part.
Yeah.
For week 7.
It's gonna be awesome, man.
With Tait Fletcher.
Awesome.
beautiful.
Oh, do you know what we did talk about?
We got coffee chugs and barbell shrugs here on this cup in front of me.
Dude, you know what we should do?
But I don't have any coffee in it. So what the fuck is going on?
I think you need.
At the Power Athlete.
No,
headquarters?
so
Well,
let's.
what if we had a Power Athlete coffee blend that we could put in our Jura coffee maker, like a custom grind?
That's
with
what
fucking-
we need, and that's what our people need.
I love that. We can do that.
Do you have a company?
We can do that at cavemancoffee.com.
Let's fucking do it. Then it's on.
Let's do it quick though, because we like all this stuff. I talk about a lot of stuff. People want to do stuff like let's make it work.
Well, it's called the HJ. You know, everybody's like, oh yeah, let me just get that for you. No,
We go all the way.
we are all about finishing.
The move here is the naked man, which means there's no. You just walk in and clothes are off.
there-
So our clothes are off. We're doing it.
We had a theory, like guys like go home, they meet a girl, they bring her back, you don't really know how it's going to go. So we were like, well,
Fast track it.
What if we just walked in and got naked? Then we put our cards on the table.
Yeah.
Either the chick leaves and you get to put your clothes back on and go to the club or go to bed, or she throws down. And so it was like basically like pushing the envelope. And like all of a sudden we were like, so as a pack, me and my buddies, we did it. And then all of a sudden it was paying massive dividends. And so I was telling these guys about it, and they were like, "It's so genius."
Well,
like,
Fisher's still young enough where he can still pull it off.
Yeah,
he's just lit up.
But so some very, very intelligent, very respected professional football players advised us, and it was called the Naked Man.
But that's also our truth be told, we operate this business basically like a professional football team.
Awesome.
So it's like if there's an opportunity, we just go all out. So we're in. Let's do it.
Let's make it do it. Yeah, let's do it. Let's
Beautiful. Well, then here, Power Athlete listeners, look for our exclusive limited edition Caveman Coffee Cool Blend. It's gonna be
the only
great.
problem is they have to listen to all 2.5 hours to get, so we might have to cut this.
The magic is
They're gonna
editing.
love it.
You think I hope to God somebody listens to 2.5 hours, because now I got to go back and listen, because I don't know what the fuck we talked about.
No,
but it
we
was
blacked
amazing.
out.
I got a smile on my face. I'm like,
It's a
No,
ton.
it was
It's a
fucking
ton.
awesome, dude.
Yeah, cool, man.
All right, well, good show, man.
Thank you.
All right, let's see.
And thanks for having me. I'm glad this is
All right,
great.
guys, thanks.
holy shit, Danny, you're still fucking there?
Dude, I just fucking... That shit was intense, man.
Now, which part was it?
Holy shit. Now it's time for you to finally empower your performance. To learn more about Tait Fletcher, follow him on Instagram under his name or the name at Caveman Coffee Co. Visit cavemancoffeeco.com to purchase the delicious caffeinated nectar of the gods. Speaking of which, Power Athlete has partnered with Caveman Coffee Co. to get you jacked while you are also getting jacked. Keep your eyes peeled for details on this limited edition product launch. Until next time, bye!